Joshua Sanders, a knight, shattered the stereotype that you need to use a sword in order to reach the realm of a master. He is considered the strongest in the Egrant continent, a great hero who ended the war of the Avalon Empire. A knight so courageous met his end in the most powerless manner. Joshua is told that he is a martial artist who's developed mana to the utmost limit. The absolute incompatibility of demonic energy and divine power is now clashing in his body. He'd be dead by now if he were a normal person. Joshua knows what is to come and is agitated as he states that he was never greedy for the throne. He never had the desire for it in the first place. He just wanted the whole world to know of the greatness of the spear and to escape the sorrow-filled life of a concubine's son. He wanted to help his best friend and his lord end the long-lasting civil war in the Empire. He wanted to serve as the shield that defends the Empire for the rest of his days. He questions his fate and the magic tower. Evergrande responds that the civil war has ended and the Emperor is now in a position where he can achieve everything he has planned without any danger. The only thing that the Emperor now has to fear is Joshua. Joshua lays on the ground, helpless. The man thanks Joshua for his efforts. As if it weren't for him, they wouldn't have been here. They are sincerely grateful to Joshua, and with that, they bid him farewell. The Emperor Van Britain turns away, saying he can't bear to watch the last moments of his best friend. Joshua feels deceived. He has 5 minutes before the magic circle explosion takes place. He feels helpless and hopeless, a lousy knight betrayed by a trusted friend. Just as he is about to reach his end, he sees Lugia, the blood-red spear known as the Death Reaper of the battlefield. He takes a hold of it, and just as he does so, an explosion takes place. The distinguished individual of the country of knights, the Avalon Empire, met a vain end befitting his fame as the undefeated spear knight. Suddenly, Joshua finds himself in a stable, questioning how he ended up there. He realizes it was the place he once resided in, and that he has now returned to the past. He is glad to have received another chance to retaliate for all that had happened to him in the past. As Joshua stands up to process what is happening, he encounters 3 men, Rolls, Royd, and Gort, who he believes are the soldiers of Duke. They ask him harshly about why he hasn't been working, and as Joshua doesn't respond, they call him a mute in a degrading manner, saying he can't talk. They look for his mother, Lucia, and talk about her in a disrespectful manner, which annoys Joshua. Lucia, the Agnes family's exclusive servant, was the woman whom Duke Agnes forcefully slept with and gave birth to his illegitimate child, Joshua. Joshua gets endlessly bullied since he is an illegitimate child of the Duke. Rolls talks disrespectfully of Lucia, and Royd asks him to keep quiet since they can get into great trouble if someone finds out. Rolls is confident that they could do anything with Joshua and his mother, since Duchess Vanessa has also said that if anything happens, she will handle it and take responsibility for it. They seem disappointed that Lucia isn't around, but they decide to bully Joshua instead. Meanwhile, Joshua manages to regain his energies and is full of wrath as they insult his mother. His training for mana is now different, as he can now reach an optimal state in a short amount of time. It doesn't use or trace the mana in the area located at the lower abdomen. Instead, it uses the mana scattered in the surrounding as it is. His whole body is able to absorb mana. He can now utilize it in an instant. As one of the men approaches to beat Joshua, they are surprised at how Joshua faints while standing still. Joshua has his eyes closed while he tries to gain a handful of mana. He can now easily do things that took him 10 years to learn in his previous life. He musters courage and, with great force, punches the man, making him fall to the ground. The other 2 men are surprised with the way Joshua managed to beat the man, making him unconscious. Joshua senses a sticky and disgusting lump in his lower abdomen, which should apparently be empty. Joshua looks at the other 2 men and thinks how hard it is to fight men who have trained with longswords. He thinks that if he beats Royd, Rolls might not come at him, since he's the most cautious among them. Just as Royd approaches, Joshua slashes at him and uses his mana to throw him back to the ground, making him unconscious. Rolls is surprised at Joshua's abilities. Joshua finally speaks, warning Rolls that if they come again and insult his mother, they will have to face the consequences. Just as Joshua's done speaking, Rolls runs rapidly, and Joshua falls to the ground as the extreme use of mana makes him weak. The news of Joshua beating the men has reached the castle, and everyone seems to be talking about it with utmost curiosity. They are amazed at the way Joshua, who was considered mute, has finally spoken, and some even feel the news is exaggerated. They also mention how the Duke might consider changing his plans for choosing the next successor, but they are also reminded of how the young Master Babel is a magic user and nobody can beat him in succession. The young Master Babel has turned 14 and is able to use mana, overshadowing the Duke, who could use mana only at the age of 16. Joshua shows up and asks the soldier to tell the Duke that he has come. Meanwhile, the Duke has called upon Rolls to inquire about what had happened earlier. Rolls shows the Duke the uniform made of orc leather crumbled and distorted. The Duke can't seem to wrap his head around the fact that a 9-year-old can possess and use mana. Chiffon says it's almost impossible in the history of the continent. He believes that Rolls is just making up stories and threatens to get rid of him if he doesn't tell the truth. The Duke says it's about time he met Joshua. The Duke is informed that Joshua has arrived to meet him. While waiting to meet the Duke, Joshua catches a glimpse of a portrait of Van Britten on a wall, which agitates him as he was betrayed by Van, whom he considered his best friend in his previous life. There is a sense of anger deep within his heart. He is attacked by a young boy, and in no time the Duke, along with Chiffon, arrive. The Duke is angry as to why they were fighting, and the young master says that they were just greeting. Joshua doesn't kneel down to greet the Duke, which annoys Chiffon. The Duke then takes Joshua's wrist to see if he has mana, and just as he does so, he feels a form of energy that he can't seem to understand. The Duke lets go of Joshua's hand, and is surprised to find no signs of mana in his body. The Duke is bewildered, as any being alive innately has some magic, but Joshua has none. Chiffon tells the Duke he already knew that Joshua had no mana and was just a mere being. The Duke thinks to himself that there is something in the mana hall that should feel sticky, but makes him feel disgusted. Chiffon says that they should not believe baseless rumors coming from the Centurions about Joshua possessing mana at such a young age. The Duke orders Joshua to reside at the castle, which triggers the young Master Babel, as he despises Joshua. He orders Chiffon to teach Joshua the basics of being a knight and also to teach him the mana training methods. Chiffon says there's no point in training him since he is innately incapable of possessing mana. The Duke says that he has hope in Joshua. Joshua is ushered to his room, and Chiffon is surprised to have received no response from Joshua after being blessed with all the benefits. Joshua lays on the bed, thinking of how the Duke mentioned that he has high hopes for him in the upcoming years. Joshua jumps out of his room at night to regain some strength. Just as he does so, the soldiers are suspicious that someone is hiding, but they find no one there. Joshua manages to escape. Meanwhile, Gord and Royd, the soldiers, have assaulted Joshua's mother. They are scared that if Joshua finds out, he might kill them right away. Immediately after, Joshua shows up and is full of wrath. Joshua warns them to leave, and one of the men, according to Joshua, is a knight that Duke Agnes personally appoints. The Red Knight feels a surreal and bizarre pressure around Joshua that he can't seem to resist. The Red Knight attacks the Centurions, bothering Joshua's mother. The soldier begs him to spare him, but the knight doesn't let go of him. Joshua shouts from behind the knight, asking him to stop, but the knight says that the man is guilty of being disrespectful towards the lady of the Duke's family and must be punished. Joshua assumes the Red Knight is of C-class rank since he was able to subdue the Centurions with only a few swings of his sword. Joshua asks the knight who he serves, and the Red Knight responds by saying he serves the Duke Agnes. Joshua orders the knight to sheath his sword and let go of the man. The knight follows commands. Joshua warns him and asks him to tell the soldiers everything he saw today without leaving out any details. The Red Knight, out of curiosity, asks Joshua if he really is the Lord. Joshua is triggered and says that he is no longer a shit cleaner or mute. The knight mentions that he will soon be deciding who to serve, and for the upcoming year he will leave his duty and serve Joshua. Joshua then meets his mother and embraces her, assuring her that he will now protect her at all costs. Joshua is glad to have received another life where he can live as the strongest spear on the continent. At the mansion, the Duke and Chiffon are engaged in a discussion. They discuss that Count Rebecca an influential man of the Empire, has visited them along with his daughter, Iselin Jin Rebecca, a genius who reached the second class at the age of 9 and was blessed with mana. He believes Rebecca has come with the intention of wooing his daughter to young Master Babel. The young Master Babel has 3 years until his coming-off ceremony, and he already has Lady Cheryl, who is the daughter of the Pontier family, which rose to dukedom with only their riches. The Duke is considering Joshua for Iselin. Chiffon is surprised as he says that Lady Iselin has received the mana blessing, while Joshua has the mana curse. In the northern part of the Duke's garden, there is an old stone. Joshua is trying to get to the top and reminisces about how he used to often visit the place. He remembers how he discovered Lugia here. He deliberately bit his hand to get some blood out of it, and as the blood dripped, he put some on the ground, and a circular energy formed around him. It is a source for him to get to the temple that possesses the Lugia. As he approaches the temple, he realizes it has been ruined, and that the Lugia was once stuck here, wrapped in chains. As he touches the Lugia, he feels a force, and when he opens his eyes, he finds himself in an all-white place. Joshua hears a strange voice that says, "I'm not an iron rod. I'm the demon god spirit, Lugia." Joshua is confused and asks if the Lugia he spent his previous life with was the demon god's spirit, which has also changed shape. "We have no time," says the iron rod. Joshua is told that as time passes, the 2 energies within his body will eat away at his life. In order to settle the 2 energies, he requires stage 4 of magic spear arts. On the Igrant continent, swords are the greatest weapon for the knight, and spears are thought of as flimsy weapons. In his previous life, his magic spear arts were at stage 4. At 5th rank, he became the strongest knight in the Empire. The Iron Rod assures him that he is with him and will help him. He takes the Lugia, does certain stunts with it, and says that as long as he's near the Lugia, he can use a certain amount of mana. He believes he will be able to easily defeat Van Britten with the amount of strength he will eventually unleash. Duke Agnes has arrived at the reception and encounters Cheryl and her father, a distinguished figure among the Ponty family's retainers. Cheryl seems to have a connection with the Duke as she talks in a rather carefree manner. Meanwhile, the Count, Jean Rebecca, has also arrived alone with his daughter, waiting to meet the Duke. Iselin meets the Duke, and Cheryl is annoyed after finding out that Iselin is also present. She asks if Joshua had actually beat up the 3 centurions, and the knight's answer is that it was all just a rumor and that Joshua had a mana curse. Meanwhile, the Duke talks to Rebecca about Joshua and asks him to look after Joshua, since Rebecca is more sensitive to mana than the Duke himself. Chiffon asks the Duke if they can first confirm if Joshua was really born with a mana defect. The Duke is somewhat annoyed as he says that they can't use a Crimson Knight on a 9-year-old boy. Chiffon convinces the Duke that he has someone under command who is perfect for this task. Kane, the knight who protected Joshua's mother, reported earlier to Chiffon that the Centurions were attacking the Duke's wife. Chiffon is surprised and asks if Duchess Vanessa is alright, and Kane responds that it's Lucia Nim and not Vanessa Nim. Chiffon doesn't consider Lucia to be of any importance. Chiffon tells Kane that he'll spar with Joshua today to check if the young Joshua Master really has the mana curse. Chiffon is worried about the fact that Joshua might take over Babel's place, which is why he manages to convince the Duke that Joshua is a mere young boy with no mana. Chiffon asks Kane to inject mana into Joshua's body to see if his body rejects or accepts it. If he opposes the man in his body, he won't be able to survive more than 10 days. Kane is surprised at how openly Chiffon supports Babel and is against Joshua. Kane meets Joshua and tells him that he has been ordered by the Duke to spar with him. Joshua is excited, but Kane says that he won't do it for real since he can't fight his own master. Joshua is offended and says that he shouldn't be taken lightly and that Kane should give it his best since his sword exists for that purpose. The Duke and others arrive. Chiffon tells Joshua that it's not a test but a concern from the Duke to confirm if he has any disabilities. The Duke's order tells Kane that it's not him that Joshua is going to fight with, but the young master called Babel. The Duke orders them to spar only with a wooden sword and not a real one, since it's just training they are doing. Joshua is all set to show them his true strength and capability. He tells the Duke that he will only be using a stick, which surprises everyone. As the fight begins, Joshua strikes with his rod, and Babel is strangely confused. He goes on to fight with utmost strength, and Babel begins to cuss at him. Babel considered him weak and someone with no mana, but Joshua had shown his real strength and also used mana, which Rebecca believes is a high level of mana and cannot be compared to that of Babel's. As the fight gets intense, the Duke stops them and is surprised at Joshua's level of mana as well as his strength to have fought Babel with a mere stick. Everyone is shocked and confused, questioning how a concubine's son could have fought the young master Babel. The Duke orders Joshua to meet him personally, which agitates Chiffon and Babel, since the Duke never really calls anyone to his room. Meanwhile, Princess Cheryl is amazed at the skills of Joshua and says, "I will make him mine," portraying how things may start to get worse. The wife of Duke Agnes, Venus Pon, asks Chiffon about the matters that happened earlier. Chiffon tells her everything he sees. He also tells her how Babel lost to Joshua, which angers her so much that she smacks Chiffon. She can't seem to accept the fact that Joshua is a mana user. Chiffon says that the Duke might take him to the capital, where he'll keep an eye on him. Chiffon believes that the Duke will announce to the people that Joshua uses rank C magic, and he might as well make him duel against the members of the Royal Knights. This makes Vanessa happy, as she will now use her conspiracies to make sure Joshua doesn't win. Meanwhile, Joshua comes to meet the Duke and questions him about who he really is, to which Joshua responds that he's the same young man he's always known. The Duke asks him if he's ever held grudges against him for overlooking him all these years, and Joshua says there's nothing like that. Joshua says he's very confident that the Duke will take him to the capital, mainly because he now considers Joshua the next successor and also to prevent any family brawls. Joshua tells the Duke that he will only be using a spear for all the training, which surprises the Duke. Joshua is confident that he will even be able to fight the 9 stars with the spear he possesses. Duke Agnes is one of the 9 stars and says he himself will be testing Joshua out. If he wins, his request to use the spear will be accepted, and if not, he will have to go to the academy for training. Vanessa has gone to meet her uncle, whom she believes would be of help in defeating Joshua and getting rid of him. She is all set to remove Joshua from her son's path. Joshua is at the castle and encounters Babel, who offers to fight him once again. Joshua asks if he's confident enough, and Babel, with his passion and desire to defeat Joshua, says he's all set to fight him. At the Great Imperial Palace, Marcus van Britten had been informed of all the recent details regarding Joshua. Britten is unaware of the fact that Joshua is the Duke's illegitimate child, and once told, he admits he's envious. The man also updates him on the rumors spreading about Joshua defeating Babel, and upon hearing that Britten is shocked as a 9-year-old made the greatest talent of the Empire fall to his knees. Britten says that it's a blessing for the Empire to possess a child so strong and courageous. Britten says he can't go because of the wild dogs with their eyes wide open, waiting for some sort of opportunity. He orders an Imperial Prince to be sent to the mansion to confirm Joshua's skills. Meanwhile, Joshua and Babel are caught in a fight again as Babel can't seem to accept defeat. Babel realizes Joshua has way too much power and strength and will be very hard to defeat. An aura explosion takes place, throwing Babel to the ground defeated. Joshua warns him to stay away from him and his mother. At the Agnes Dukedom, Joshua is in bed, tired and exhausted. He says he used too much mana without resting. Someone is at the door, and as Joshua gets up to open the door, he meets Cheryl. Cheryl introduces herself and asks him to call at noon if he wants. She doesn't hesitate to enter, but is stopped by Joshua. Joshua shuns her and asks her to buzz off. At the Duke Agnes's training hall, all the Centurions have gathered and are apparently going to be trained by the young master Joshua. 2 of the knights ask roles where his friends Gord and Lloyd are, but they receive no response. Joshua asks all the men to attack him, which surprises everyone as they have already assumed that Joshua is weak and isn't capable of fighting so many men at once. Joshua asks Rolls to do the same, but as he refuses, Joshua threatens him, telling him he'd do to him what he did to the other 2 knights. Rolls falls to the ground, asking for another chance. Joshua asks him to draw out his blade, and if he does win against him, he'll forget anything that ever happened. As Rolls attacks Joshua, he uses mana power to fight back, making rolls fall to the ground. Joshua wants the knights to not judge anyone's skills based on their appearance. All the centurions kneel down to show they admit and accept that Joshua possesses some incredible skills, regardless of his age. Meanwhile, Cyril is in her room, disappointed and sorrowful as she is shunned by Joshua. The Duke calls Joshua and asks why he had punished the centurions, and Joshua says he wanted them to know he has the same blood as the Duke, just so they don't bother him and his mother again. The Duke is amazed at his extraordinary qualities and says he would have done the same or worse. The Duke asks Joshua to prepare since they have to leave to judge Joshua's manner. Meanwhile, the knights are talking amongst themselves, and one of the knights tells Chiffon that he's scared he might lose his place because his position is at stake. The Royal Knight Order is about to arrive, and as it does, Joshua catches a glimpse of the fourth prince, Kaiser Van Britten, someone who played a significant role in his previous life. Joker, the 1st Imperial Battalion Knight Order captain, is involved in a fight with the newbies who have joined the battalion. He believes they are new and need to stop pretending to be knights with the little mana they have. A man enters and tells Joker that there's a mission from Vanessa Nim, and she has asked Joker to look after it. The mission is to make sure Joshua never gets to wield a sword again. Joshua encounters Kaiser and is full of wrath, remembering all that had happened in his previous life. The knight asks Joshua to be respectful towards Prince Kaiser, which annoys Joshua, and he says that there can't be two suns under the same sky in the Empire. He continues by saying that the only person who deserves respect is the Emperor. Kaiser Van says he too won't respect someone with an uncertain identity like Joshua. The 9th Imperial Battalion Vice Captain Balmong Don shows up with his knights and approaches Joshua. He degrades Joshua and calls him the illegitimate child, who is probably insane. Joshua's knight takes out his sword to protect his master and is bashed by Balmong for defending a lowly illegitimate son. The knight defends him, saying that Joshua is part of Duke Agnes's family and must be respected. One of the 9 stars, Duke von Agnes, shows up and asks Joshua to apologize for acting rashly towards the prince, but Van Britten, with his manipulative nature and convincing manner, says that it is all right and that Joshua needs to show that he really is a knight and doesn't just talk without action. Joshua is aware of Van Britten's crafty methods. Joker asks Van Britten if he can fight Joshua and also identify if Joshua really possesses mana. On the training ground, Joshua and Joker confront each other, all set to show their abilities. Joker laughs at Joshua for carrying a stick, which he believes would be of no help. As Joker attacks Joshua, he feels a heavy pressure that pushes him backward. It is obvious that Joshua is winning with all the techniques he uses. Joker feels defeated already and knows that if he doesn't defeat Joshua, he will have to be answerable to Vanessa. The knights are concerned because the Joker's magic went beyond B grade and Joshua may be in danger. Balmong asks Joker to stop as it gets too problematic. Joker, with his B-grade mana, is pushed back and thrown to the ground, which shocks him. He's bewildered as to how he gets defeated, even with B-grade mana. Joshua finds it hard to fight Joker with the B-grade mana he's using. Joshua has no other option but to activate Lugia. The knights observe that Joshua has used an artifact, which is a weapon that contains magic. Van Britten asks Balmong to stop the fight, since he has already figured out that Joshua's skills are very impressive. Joshua is appreciated for his skills and is appointed as a C-rank knight. Joshua's resentment towards the prince and the knights is shown through his words, as he says, "I'll make sure everyone here suffers." Joshua is handed a sword with the title of the youngest mana user. The Agnes family gathers for a regular meeting. The Duke asks them to report anything they have noticed lately. Count Acknell says that the knights who left for the expedition have returned because of black ogres, one of the strongest monsters in the Black Forest. Everyone's scared as to how anyone would be capable of fighting the monsters. The Duke asks if there are more issues, and Chiffon says he has an unresolved matter. Chiffon says that Joshua's skills and abilities are somewhat hard to believe, and that no one can easily wrap their heads around what they saw earlier. He expresses his concern that Joshua might be borrowing the powers of an outer source, which may endanger the future. He mentions the weapon Joshua was using, a spear that had some extraordinary magical powers in it. Everyone seems to now be skeptical about Joshua's abilities. Joshua enters the room, and as he passes by Chiffon, he challenges him to cross blades with him. Since he's the one who's very dubious about Joshua's skills, Chiffon is triggered and starts shouting at Joshua, which agitates the Duke, and he asks them to stop. The Duke tells Chiffon that Joshua's skills have been observed by the magician Evergrant of the Royal Knight Order, and if there was anything suspicious, the Royal Knight would have noticed it. The Duke further says that there are things that he still needs to confirm, so in order to figure out Joshua's abilities, he will have to take him to the Forest of Dark Beings. The Knights show their concern towards the Duke sending Joshua to the forest, as they think it may not be safe. The Duke says that once the forest is cleared, he'll be admitting Joshua to the Imperial Academy in the capital. Chiffon is concerned because if the Duke sends Joshua to the academy, they won't be able to harm him in any way, and if his skills get more polished, there are chances of Babel being pushed back from the heir competition. Joshua requests that the Duke let his mother, Lucia, go along with him, which Chiffon says isn't right, but the Duke agrees and allows Joshua to take her along. As the Duke finishes the meeting, Babel shows up and pays his respects to the Duke. Chiffon is triggered that Joshua doesn't show respect to Babel. The Duke asks why he has shown up so late, and Babel says that he would officially want to renounce the official heir seat of the Agnes family. Everyone's extremely surprised, including Chiffon, who had been finding ways to get rid of Joshua so that Babel could get the title of the next heir. The Duke is happy with the change and finds it a positive one. Meanwhile, Duchess Vanessa is concerned about Babel and says that he's very stubborn and won't change his mind. She's aware of all the previous events and asks Chiffon about Joshua's plans. He notifies her with all the details, and she decides to have a private meeting with Lucas before they depart for the capital. The knights are preparing to depart, and as they do so, Joshua remembers that the Duke has given him a gift called the Don Ring, which is an artifact that allows the user to don an armor as soon as mana is injected into the ring. He asks Joshua to change his identity while he's in the jungle. Joshua is glad to see the position he has acquired in such a short period of time. The Duke asks Joshua if he resents him, to which Joshua reminisces about how, in the next 10 years, the Duke will meet his unexpected end in the Civil War, but he seems to have formed a connection with him by now. Kaiser Van Britten shows up and, with his manipulative words, tells Joshua that he will assist and protect him, and give him the benefit of entering the Knight Order without taking the Imperial Knight test. Joshua is annoyed, knowing how manipulative and vile Kaiser is. They depart with only one Knight Order, the 4th-class magician Armand, and 100 others, including Joshua and Babel. They reach the castle on the loch, adjacent to the Forest of Dark Beings. As they approach the castle, the Viscount Beege, who is also Vanessa's relative, and Anna, his daughter, show up to welcome the Duke. Beege asks about Joshua, and Chiffon says that he's the illegitimate son of the Duke, and Beege seems to despise Joshua already. The Duke asks for them to finish the introduction and get to work. Beege, however, asks them to first rest and then begin their task, but the Duke says his men aren't weak and don't really need any rest. Beege says he'll join them even though his efforts may be of no use. The Duke tells Beege not to come since Anya would be home alone, which is not safe. Beege says that Anna possesses the extraordinary quality of spirit magic and would be a great help if taken along for the task. Joshua is amused by Anna's skills and thinks she has a familiar face. Meanwhile, at the Avalon Empire, the Emperor is discussing the previous events with one of his strongest knights. He's amazed by the extraordinary and incredible qualities of Joshua. He asks his knight, Evergrant, for an opinion about Joshua and how much potential he has. The knight says there was something different about Joshua, and fighting him would be somewhat of a big deal. He gets notified with all the details of the conversation between Kaiser and Joshua. Evergrant asks if they can keep Joshua in the palace for a short period of time, and the knight responds that they will do so as Kaiser has already planned it. Joshua, however, is in the forest fighting the monsters and seems to have been intimidated by them. The knights are setting up their camps for the night as the Duke tells them that the monsters will show up, especially during the Red Moon, and become several times more aggressive. The period between the monsters coming down to the town has become shorter and is harming the citizens. The Duke says they won't approach them first. He then sends them all to set up the camps. While they are collecting materials for the camps, Joshua asks the men to go back since he'll take some time collecting more materials. Just as they go, Joshua goes inside the forest with his spear, saying, "This is my only chance." Beeg is caught stalking him from behind the tree. There are things that were born out of the power of the primordial, just as there are elements in magic. The ancient magicians called them primordial stones. Only 5 primordial stones have shown themselves to the world. It is a godly object that the magicians and knights desire. Joshua is in search of the primordial stone in the middle of the forest, since that is the only thing that can keep his power from going berserk. Just as he goes further, a black ogre shows up. He plans on attacking it from behind by striking his neck. As he does so, the ogre seems too hard for him to defeat, which is why he must hide himself. He finds a place to hide, and after hiding, he uses the technique of the Assassin King, which manipulates the mana, enveloping his entire body in it. It makes one forget about the surroundings. The ogre passes by him without feeling his presence. Joshua runs further into the middle of the forest in search of the primordial stone, but falls to the ground again and is attacked by multiple ogres. He uses one of his techniques to get rid of them. Joshua tries to get rid of them all, but he realizes that the child's body has its limit, and he hasn't yet reached the level of the second phase of magic spear arts. He realizes he needs to find the primordial stone and join his group before anyone finds out. Just as they are setting up the camps, the ogres attack them in huge numbers. The knights set out to fight and kill a few of them, but when they realized that the ogres were too many, the C-ranked knight planned to retreat, but Chiffon ordered that no one should abandon the camps. They start a battle, fighting all the monstrous creatures. They strike at them with great strength, killing most of them, but they soon realize that there's no end to them as more and more start to attack them. Chiffon, considering himself a powerful B-rank knight, gets attacked and falls to the ground, asking everyone to retreat. The Duke immediately comes out of the camp and uses his extraordinary skills to finish all the creatures in one go. He manages to kill them all, surprising almost everyone with the strength and power he possesses as one of the 9 stars. Joshua manages to get rid of almost all the ogres, and as he goes further, he sees an immensely hollow hole in the ground, and as he stands at the side of the cliff, he says, "Bronto." While everyone is discussing the Duke's extraordinary qualities, the knights realize that Joshua is missing and has probably abandoned them in fear of fighting the ogres. They start questioning his abilities because they believe he got intimidated by the black ogres and left already. The Duke shouts, saying the fight isn't over yet and that they should stay focused. While they are fighting, Joshua appears and strikes at 2 of the black ogres, killing them. Joshua is able to use a portion of Bronto's power, but he's unaware of how long his body would hold out with this technique. Everyone lauds him for it and is surprised at his C-rank skills. More black ogres attack him, and he asks the knights to back off as he will fight them all alone. As he does so, the knights seem surprised by his qualities. The Duke is somewhat aware that Joshua is barely holding on to his conscience because he doesn't want to show any weakness. The knight says that Joshua is capable of being the 3rd-class master as he possesses qualities of a qualified magician that are only found in a few people. Just as the ogre attacks, Joshua reaches his limit and falls to the ground. The Duke manages to protect and save Joshua from the attacks. Joshua finds himself in the dukedom, which has caught fire, and the building seems to collapse. He finds Babel fighting to protect the dukedom, threatening anybody who tries to destroy it. He feels a force of wind coming towards him, and as he sees clearly, it is Annabella Grace. He then starts to connect the dots, as he earlier felt that he knew Anna. There is a connection or an earlier event that has clearly happened related to Anna that Joshua tries to remember, but can't. He sees himself 10 years prior to the events, and sees the dukedom being wiped out and destroyed. As he opens his eyes and shouts Dracia Bell Grace, he realizes he was dreaming all this time, and says that prophetic dreams are all because of Bronto. He ponders over how to bring out the power of magic spear arts against monsters, and he probably needs to be somewhere around a starting B-rank knight. The prophetic dream is another power that Bronto holds. He is still intrigued to find out more about the primordial stone. As Joshua moves out of bed, he realizes the Duke is sitting right next to him as he looks at the moon and expresses how it has changed color in such a short time. The Duke explains to Joshua how he'll now be changing his identity, and Joshua agrees, as his main priority now is to get back his previous life strength. The Duke was intrigued by Joshua's mentioning the cursed name of Dracia Belgrace. The Duke wonders how Joshua knows the cursed name of Dracia Belgrace. He told Joshua to go to sleep as they'd return to the estate first thing in the morning. In the secret room in Losh Castle, Chiffon and Beeg are discussing how Joshua is a threat to Babel's position, and that if Vanessa doesn't do anything about it, the adversities may increase. Chiffon says that Joshua was just a child who ran errands in the stables. No one could have guessed that he had such an amazing talent hidden away. Beeg can't wrap his head around the fact that Joshua possesses the qualities of AC rank knight, and he assumes Joshua has made a contract with the high-ranking demon. Chiffon goes on to say that the Imperial Knight Order and the Duke carefully watched Joshua before giving him the title, so there's no way that anything he has is demonic. Beeg says he'll keep an eye on Joshua in case he's involved in anything vile. Anna, Beeg's daughter, will also be going to the Imperial Academy, so it will be easy to get information from her. Cox tells Cyril at the Agnes estate that Joshua is coming back after the subjugation is done. In the Forest of Dark Beings, there will be a big feast. Cyril seems unhappy, and she asks Cox why he's excited for Joshua to come when he initially hated him. Cox seems to be convinced of Joshua's skills and abilities. Cyril is aware that the Duke of Pontius has sent her to connect with Babel because of a mercenary king. The mercenary king is mostly one of the 12 superhumans who can compete for the absolute seat of 9 stars. He's secretly joined forces with Marquis Cromwell, who comes after Duke Pontier in wealth. Things have gotten acute between the two families, Cromwell's and Pontier, as a territorial war may break out between the two. The Duke has decided to get Babel married to his daughter, so he can get Duke Agnes aid in the upcoming battle. Cox believes Cyril is being sacrificed, but the Pontier has no other way to avoid this emergency. Cox asks Cyril to have a conversation with Lord Joshua at least once, and Cyril, amused by the idea, asks Cox to arrange a meal between her and Joshua before he departs. The grand feast at Agnes State begins, and the voices in the air are praising Joshua and his incredible skills. Everyone is impressed by the 10-year-old's achievement of killing the Black Ogres. Joshua enters with his subordinate knight and says he's too exhausted to attend. The man informs him that his mother Lucia will also be attending Vanessa's feast. Joshua goes to the place where Vanessa has set up a feast for him and his mother. Vanessa welcomes Joshua and informs him that this is their first meeting. Chiffon asks Joshua aggressively to pay respect to the Duchess, but Joshua, being stubborn, doesn't. Upon his mother's request, he greets Vanessa. Vanessa thinks to herself how she will no longer be seeing him anymore, and this is clearly the first and last time they've met. Joshua's mom, Lucia, doesn't seem to know that he has become a knight and is going to the academy. As she finds out through Chiffon, she seems more than happy and proud of her son. Vanessa says she prepared the dinner as a means of congratulating him on becoming a knight. She apologizes to Lucia for overlooking her all this time and ill-treating her. Vanessa seems to have put up a facade and pretends to be generous to Joshua and Lucia. She asks for dinner to be served. She tells them to be comfortable, and also that the dinner has been arranged with the intention of growing closer to both of them from the core of her heart. Lucia is about to eat, but Joshua stops her and says he needs to first introduce himself. He does so and then asks the men to serve dinner to Vanessa first, since she's been too kind to them. Joshua is suspicious that the food being served might contain poison. He asks Vanessa to start, and she responds by saying she has put on too much weight and is picky when it comes to food. Chiffon shouts, saying it's disrespectful for him to be accusing the Duchess of mixing poison in their food. Chiffon pulls out his sword, which triggers Joshua, and he pulls his spear out in return. Joshua is very angry because he knows the food is poisonous, and Chiffon threatens to kill him for being rude to Vanessa. While Joshua and Chiffon are engaged in a fight, the Duke shows up. He stops them and asks them why they've been acting so aggressively. The Duke asks both Joshua and Lucia to go rest since they'll be leaving the next morning. As they leave, the Duke questions Vanessa about her sudden generosity. The Duke is well aware of Vanessa's intentions and that she is envious of why Joshua gets all the attention. Vanessa is full of rage as she expresses how she didn't marry the Duke because she loved him, but mainly because it was an arranged marriage. She does not want her son to be victimized, and she requests that the Duke exercise basic courtesy. The Duke warns her and tells her that he's been aware of all that she's up to. Meanwhile, Joshua updates his mother on everything that has happened. Kane shows us and makes us glad that Joshua is going to the castle. He'll get to learn a lot. Kane asks Joshua for a favor, allowing him to serve as Joshua's liege. Joshua tells Kane that the path he has chosen is bloody and full of criticism. Kane, without thinking twice, accepts that he's all set to fight for and with Joshua from now on. The next morning they plan to leave, and as they do so, Cheryl shows up. She says she wants to greet them before they depart. The Duke asks if she wants to join them in the Arcady. She refuses and explains that she has promised to visit Cox's family. She then approaches Joshua and gives him something, saying it is the symbol of our family, and requests that he visit her family in Arcady. Cox is enraged at Cheryl for giving the symbol, as it is of great importance and can't just be given to anyone. As she gives him the symbol, all the knights start murmuring amongst themselves about Cheryl being interested in Babel first and now Joshua. Joshua can't seem to turn her down, as it would ruin his reputation as being generous. He takes the symbol from her, and the Duke orders them to depart. At the Great Kaltika Palace, the Emperor is enraged that Joshua rejected his request to join the Imperial Palace. Joshua says in his letter that he wants to follow his Emperor and the laws of his empire. The Emperor seems to have been looking forward to Joshua's making it to the Imperial Knight Order with his own strength. They reach the Agnes family's private mansion in Arcady. Kane thinks nothing has changed about the place since he spent his entire childhood there. The mansion was a place that Kane described as serene, where they could train in peace without anyone's judgment. Joshua says he wants to leave for a while and asks Kane to look after his mother. Joshua goes to the capital Arcady's downtown area and, as he encounters him, tells him that he has come to find a red coin buried deep in the rough river. Joshua believes he's come to the right place, and he just needs an informant who will retrace the past events for him. The man takes him to the place, which seems very low-key. Nobody questions him or gives him bizarre looks. They take him through 3 doors and eventually take him to a room and ask him about what information he requires. The man is surprised to have found that Joshua is already aware of his occupation. Joshua is surprised that the man knows his identity, even though the Duke managed to hide it all these years. From Joshua's expressions, the man realizes that he's confused about how everyone's aware of his identity, but he assures him that nobody except a few men of the place are aware. The man offers to provide Joshua with first-class information, and Joshua knows he might ask for something in return for providing him with such valuable information. Joshua asks where the heirloom of the Orviscount family, which was wiped out several years ago, is. The man says that most of their assets have been sold on the black market, but he'll need some time to find out for sure. Joshua continues by saying that just as the person who finds the red coin buried somewhere in the Ralph River receives a blessing from the moon, the person who brings the symbol will also receive the moon door. Joshua says that if he accepts his conditions, he will find the symbol in 3 years. Joshua's intelligence amuses the man, who says that he will first listen to the conditions before making a decision. Joshua goes on to say that his first condition is that his information should not be leaked to anyone. Second, he'd want to know about Dracia Belgrace, who is apparently the war god. He then asks if he's worth investing in. 2 months have passed since Joshua last talked to the Moon Door. He has been training ever since he arrived and has also managed to send Lucia to the other state that the Duke owned. While Joshua is at the dinner table with Kane, the informant shows up after 2 months. He hands down a roll of paper to Joshua, saying it has passed through several hands. The heirloom for them isn't a big deal, which is why they won't charge a commission as well. The man leaves, saying he'll take the commission fee all at once in the end. Joshua is suspicious of why the man is being so generous to him. Joshua learns that the Orviscount family was once a renowned magician family, on par with the Regressed family in the Avalon Empire. Long ago, the Orvis family members were the only ones not treated with contempt because they were magicians of Avalon. The head of the Orvis family defeated knights who were on the verge of master rank. The incident didn't receive much reaction from the country of Night Avalon, but it did from the Kingdom of Magic Terror. Several decades later, the family fell into ruin in an instant at the hands of their own country's imperial family. Joshua mentions the Barham accent, and Kane says he knows him as he is famous in the underworld and is also the brother of Viscount B. Immediately after the Count, Rebreaker shows up along with his daughter. Soon after, we are shifted to a scene where Baron Pavaloom is seen meeting the young Lord Veronshine Villas. The young lord says that the deadline for our promise has already passed. Baron Pavaloom tells Veron that elves are hard to find, and he'll need some time for it. Veron seems mad at him for not doing what he's asked and gives him more time. Veron is the son of Marquis Villas, an influential figure in the military. Veron seems to be a smart and cunning man who knows how to handle crowds and deal with people like Baron. He makes sure he's intimidating towards him so that Baron stays loyal to him. Meanwhile, Joshua and Kane meet Count Rebreaker. He seems to be a man who talks in the most formal manner to almost everyone. While Joshua looks at Ponceline Rebreaker, he realizes what an ignoble lady she is. She steps forward to greet him and Joshua, so surprised at how talkative she had gotten. Immediately after Veron shows up with his subordinate, after looking at Ponceline, he is amused by her beauty and asks where she's from. Ponceline seems to be taken aback by his statement and doesn't respond, which makes Veron feel insulted. It is obvious that Veron is a man who boasts his family's name, but is really of no use. Joshua stops him from insulting Poncel, and, as the Duke had told him earlier, says that his name is Frederick. At the Lock Castle, Beeg and his daughter Anna are sitting at the table with a man covered from head to toe and looking mysterious. She informs him of Joshua and his monstrous skills. The man is triggered and asks why he hadn't known any of this earlier. Anna tells the man that she has a plan and that she'll be joining the academy soon. Meanwhile, at the restaurant, Veron asks Joshua who his family really is, and Joshua says it's none of his business. Veron asks Joshua to kneel down and apologize, but Joshua refuses. Veron's subordinate knight attacks Joshua, but Joshua defeats the B-rank knight with a single blow. Veron is shocked that a 10-year-old is able to use mana and defeat a strong knight. He asks Joshua for his real identity again, and Joshua strikes at him using only his fist, making him fall to the ground. The knight asks him to stop and let him go, but Joshua is enraged and doesn't let go of Veron. Joshua takes off Veron's ring and tells the knight to come to the castle and get it from him if he really wants it back. If not, he'd sell it to the black market. Joshua leaves with Kane, and Isellen follows. Veron and Mucker reach the castle, and Veron is enraged at the way he was treated at the restaurant by Joshua, whom he believes is Ven Frederick. He asks Mucker to find out about his family, and he'll make sure he kills everyone related to Joshua because of the way he was humiliated. Mucker says there is no justification for the incident, and nobody would believe it if they said they were knocked down by a 10-year-old boy. Veron is full of wrath and wants to find a way to kill everyone who was present at the moment of the incident, even the Rebreaker. Mucker informs Veron of the family token that Joshua took after he knocked down Veron. Mucker says they'll first send a substitute to get the token from Joshua, and based on how Joshua reacts, they'll take their next step. Joshua is in the restaurant, aware of Veron's plans, and knows that he'll send a substitute now. Kane, however, is observing Joshua closely and realizes that everything Joshua does has always been his plan, and he'll be surpassing all expectation. Lady Isellen thanks Joshua for helping her. As if he hadn't helped her, things could have gotten worse. Joshua says he'll ask her for a favor in the future in return for what he did for her, and she agrees. Baron Accent Provalum has come as a stand. In to say sorry and return the Villa family's token, Joshua asks him to get Veron the next time he comes, or else the token will be melted. Baron is agitated and says he'll get Mucker instead. Joshua agrees, and in return asks for Baron's rings that he's wearing. As Joshua and Kane reach the castle, Kane asks Joshua why he'd taken the Baron's ring, and Joshua explains that it is the treasure of the Orvis family named the Elf's Tears. Elves, with their beautiful appearance, were a fascinating race to humans, and for that reason alone, humans began to hunt them. Many elves lost their homes and died due to it. Humans became the target of elven rage after that. To save themselves, they all gathered at the Forest of Elves, and to never allow humans to find them again. The High Elves made a barrier throughout the forest by combining their strength. Even for High Elves with extraordinary magical talent, it was difficult to maintain the barrier, which led to all the High Elves dying except one, Elubuz. The only person who knew the location of the Forest of Elves was the head of the Orvis family, Exarath Dick Orvis. Joshua believes he's dead, and someone might have killed him while trying to get information on the Forest of the Elves. The ring held special power concerning the Orvis family. Joshua then asks Cain to do him the favor of leaving the mansion and going to where the Duke resided. Cain couldn't leave Joshua alone, as he thought annoying things could happen to him, especially when he's alone with no knight tending to him. Veron could also attack him since he's a part of the academy and has some special skills. Joshua says he's way too good at enduring and will manage alone. He further asks Cain for another favor, which is to learn the way of the sword from the Duke, which Cain accepts. At the center of the vast Igrant continent, there is an ivory tower so high that it could pierce the skies. It is the sanctuary as well as the pride of magicians, known as the Magic Tower. As the magicians are seated around the table in the Magic Tower, the Magic Town Master, as well as the heads of the 7 magicians, ask why the 3 seats are empty. Marcus replies that Flame and Void don't like to stay in one place, and Thunder has left for an important matter on the case that he's working on. He continues the meeting without them. The main topic of the meeting is the Primordial Stone. Theta, who holds the 7 magicians' storm seat, gets a little too casual and is stopped while he jokes around. They are informed that Bronto has been taken away, which is concerning. They have discovered some information that, where Bronto appeared, a magic swordsman has also turned up. They are amazed to have found that the magic swordsman is just 9 years old. Elisha, the 7 magicians' ice seat, seems to have been taken aback by the update about Bronto being taken away by the swordsman of the Agnes family. They are still not certain about the Bronto being taken away by the Agnes family, which is why their master tells them to stay quiet and observe for now. The last statement by the master of the Magic Tower is that the world changes so quickly that I wonder if the change is for better or for worse, denoting that change is inevitable, and so is predictability. Joshua says the ring he was given by Baron has special powers, like the 7th class high-ranking barrier that automatically protects the user in dangerous situations, and it also increases affinity with spirits. Since the ring was made for the only daughter of the family head of Orvis, men cannot use it. Joshua decides to give it to his mother, Lucia. Zero, the informant of Joshua, has come to greet his master, who informs him that the Magic Tower has started to move to find Joshua, thinking that he is the descendant of the magic swordsman, Ainslot. Zero's master explains how things would change drastically if Joshua brought them the red coin. Thunder, one of the magicians, has tied Viscount B to the tree while fighting the monstrous creatures. As he finishes doing so, he asks Beeg if Joshua's skills are better than his, and Beeg responds that Joshua really isn't a big deal and does not possess so much power. He also informs Thunder of Joshua's current location. Beeg offers to help Thunder plan on trampling on Joshua, since Beeg finds Joshua very arrogant. Thunder says he doesn't want to ask a mere Viscount for help, and would rather finish him off. Viscount Beeg is triggered and says that if he gets killed, the Duke will surely want to inquire and will eventually find out Thunder's identity. Time passed, and Joshua joined the academy after turning 10. Thousands of children of nobles joined the academy. They are divided into 6 grades and are advanced into the next grade through an advancement exam. Joshua believes that the 6 years he's about to spend here would be enough for him to achieve the 5th stage of the magic spear art that he reached in his past life. As Joshua is led to his room, he meets a boy named Agares Kunt Douglas, who is the same age as him and appears to be someone who, unlike some children, does not flaunt their power. Joshua introduces himself as Ven Friedrich. Immediately after, another young boy named Icarus shows up and is surprised that Joshua and Agares have already started to get along. Joshua realizes that Icarus is the genius of the era and the heavenly brain of the universe. When the internal battle took place between the first and second imperial princes, 2 men contributed greatly to it. One was Kaiser van Britten, and the other was Icarus. Icarus and Joshua meet, and they intend to get along in the future. Joshua finds it a fateful meeting and wants to bring Icarus to his side no matter what. Lucia thanks Joshua and turns to look at the ring he gave her. Cain reminds her of how incredible her son is. Duke Agnes shows up and asks Lucia if she's comfortable, and she thanks him for the generosity he's shown. One of the Duke's subordinates questions his decision to keep Lucia with him and overlook Vanessa as she might retaliate. He reminds the Duke of the authenticity of the legitimate son being the next heir. If Joshua is chosen, there may be endless chaos on the continent. During the first class after entering the academy, Joshua found out that Regressed and Icarus were very close since they were already famous within the academy. While they are in the hallway, Joshua sees Amaru Brunston, one of the 5 masters of Avalon. Both Amaru and his friend say that if they're in the same class with flunkers such as Icarus and Regressed, they'll most definitely get good grades. Joshua then notices their neckties and realizes they are second-year students. Amaru insults Regressed and calls him an illegitimate child who is also a flunker, and Icarus comes to protect him. Icarus falls into a fight with Duncan, Amaru's friend, while trying to protect Regressed. As the fight gets intense, Joshua intervenes and is eager to change their mindsets, which think lowly of illegitimate children as well as of commoners who treat them like livestock. Soon after, Kaiser Van Britten shows up, intensifying the situation and making everyone wonder what may happen next. Meanwhile, Varen asks Mucker to find information about Joshua, who is disguised as Sven Friedrich. Mucker is aware of the promise he made to Joshua about apologizing to the Rebrecker family and stopping Varen from doing anything foolish. Mucker tells Varen he won't be able to break the promise made to Joshua. Varen is triggered as he says that the promise was not made by him, so he doesn't have anything to do with it. At the academy, Joshua thinks of ways to draw Icarus's attention towards him, as he'll be of great importance to him. Kaiser Van Britten has also offered to take Joshua to visit the Imperial Palace before he graduates, which Joshua already planned on doing since he has to find something there. As the class goes on, the students ask questions about the importance of a sword, and Joshua says that swords, especially rapiers, are the worst weapons ever. Amaru takes Joshua's opinion too personally and says that his family has been mocked since they use rapiers. He offers Joshua the chance to spar with him at that particular moment. Joshua is hesitant as he doesn't want to break the rules of student fighting. They are allowed to spar with wooden weapons, and Joshua can't think of a better weapon than his own spear, which would clearly break Amaru's body. Regressed warns Joshua of the power the Sten family possesses, and that he should apologize already, because Amaru will try to hurt him in the future. Joshua seems not to be affected by Regress's warnings, as he won't apologize to Amaru for being weak. Joshua asks Regressed about his friendship with Amaru in the past, and Regressed explains how their families shared a deep friendship as they had experienced some life-and-death experiences together. Amaru and Regressed shared a bond mainly because they were both far from inheriting their positions. Regressed knows him well and also knows that Amaru is very stubborn. It would be better for Joshua to simply apologize. Joshua expresses that he stays true to his beliefs and won't kneel down to anyone. Mucker has arrived at the Moon Door to find information about Joshua, who introduced himself as Ashvan Friedrich. The man, who is also Joshua's informant, says that he may have a rough idea about the guy, but he'll charge 1 million gold in return for the information he will provide. Mucker is shocked as to who Joshua is, and why the man at the Moon Door is asking for 1 million gold just to provide information about him. The informant knows Varen won't chase Joshua, as he's a man who is strong in front of the weak and weak in front of the strong. He wants Joshua to find the red coin. Until then, he'll make sure nobody finds out anything about Joshua's identity. At the academy, Joshua is alone and tries to regain the strength that he's lost. The divine and demonic energy in his body were like water and oil, impossible to mix. He manages to stabilize it with Bronto's power. As he does so, he uses all his energies, gets unconscious, and falls. As he opens his eyes, he realizes he passed out. As he starts processing everything, he realizes that if he learns to control the demonic and divine energy using Bronto, he might as well be able to reach the 3rd stage of the magic spear art soon. He also realizes that the magic spear, Lugia, is nowhere around him. Immediately after, Lugia Nim shows up in the form of a child and tells Joshua that he had passed out for 3 days straight. Joshua is concerned about what may have happened at the academy. Lugia tells Joshua that the true power of the primordial stone lies elsewhere. He also asks Joshua about the unique power of the Bronto stone, but Joshua seems to be clueless and starts questioning everything. While Icarus and Agares are sharing fun stories, they encounter Amaru and Duncan, who do not hesitate to smack Icarus. Agares defends his friend but is insulted and humiliated. They say that they want to get rid of both Icarus and Agares. The headmaster shows up and says he'll have to take strict action if the fights continue. Joshua enters the room after disappearing for 3 days. Everyone's amazed at his guts to have arrived so late, and that too after having disappeared for so long. As they get seated and begin the class, Agares tells Joshua to apologize to Amaru as things may get worse in the future. Joshua says he won't be apologizing or bowing down to anyone. Joshua doesn't want to be part of a fight among children, since he has bigger things to do. Joshua is back with Lugia and asks Lugia how he is aware of the revenge, since that was something concerning his past life and nobody but Joshua knew about it. Joshua asks Lugia about the abilities Bronto possesses and Lugia says he'll only reveal them if his conditions are met. His conditions include regaining his past relationships and taking care of himself. As Joshua agrees, Lugia tells Joshua that Bronto doesn't possess the quality of precognition, and the dream Joshua saw earlier was because of the divine power and not Bronto. The power that Bronto holds is growth, explains Lugia. Amaru reminds the professor of the spar he is about to have with Joshua, and as the professor refuses, Amaru is triggered and feels humiliated. Joshua and Amaru are caught in an argument that later turns into a spar across tables, and Joshua tells him that he'll show Amaru how useless a rapier is. Despite Icarus's and the other boys' repeated warnings, Joshua is not scared or intimidated by the Sten family name or Amaru as the fight between them begins. Joshua is confident in his skills, and dealing with Amaru is not a big deal for him. As Icarus warns Joshua, he says he can bet he'll end up being the victorious one. Amaru is all set to fight, and as the duel begins, Joshua stands with his eyes closed, which confuses Amaru. Amaru attacks Joshua with his rapier, and as Joshua opens his eyes, he reacts by breaking Amaru's rapier. Everyone appears to have been astounded by Joshua's energy and power as his rapier breaks and he falls to the ground. Joshua believes he has reached the height of his dreams, which he couldn't have in his past life. When Anna speaks to her father at the Avalon Academy, female dorm, he informs her that Viscount Beeg has died at the hands of the Thunder Seat of the 7 magicians. They are disappointed because Viscount Beeg was so helpful to them. He tells her that the magic tower is looking for Joshua since he has taken a valuable item. They end their discussion by talking about Joshua and the way he has created chaos in the academy. The academy master calls Joshua and asks him to reveal his real identity since the swordsmanship he showed wasn't something he'd inherit from the Friedrich family. Joshua doesn't change his answer. The master warns him that the academy has ranks and someone like Amaru will always humiliate him since he comes from a wealthy family. Joshua responds that if a teacher like him pretends to be oblivious to such acts, then there's nothing he has to offer to his student. Joshua calls him a coward for not speaking up against and changing the system of ranks. Joshua says he doesn't want to stay in such a place and doesn't want to leave either since he isn't a coward and gets intimidated very easily. While Joshua stands, contemplating leaving the academy, Amaru enters. Amaru bows down and apologizes for what he did earlier and how he degraded the spear. Joshua is shocked and wonders what Amaru is up to. Amaru expresses that he wants to learn swiftness techniques from Joshua. Joshua says he'll teach him, but under certain conditions. He expresses that he would want to know about the Academy's circle, as well as about Samiz Kun Douglas, whom the Academy teacher had mentioned earlier. At the Avalon Imperial Palace, the Emperor has received a letter from the Swallow Empire, supposedly from Draxia. He plans on sending 2 men to help Draxia. The knight also informs the Emperor that Joshua has joined the Academy after defeating the son of the Sten family. The Emperor is impressed once more by Joshua's skills and is planning to send a personal recommendation letter for him to join the Imperial Knight Order. Amaru tells Joshua all the details about the Academy. He informs him of the Araxia Circle, which involves all the wealthy people who exploit the weakest and are collectively helping each other to gather power for the future. Joshua then ponders bringing Icarus to his side for future assistance. Icarus shows up and warns Joshua of what may happen after their duel, and that the Araxia Circle may approach him. Joshua reminds Icarus of the bet they had earlier, and now that he's won, he tells Icarus he wants him, which clearly means he's convincing him to join him, since his abilities will come in handy in the future. Icarus says he'll think about it and leaves. Cain is practicing certain skills and techniques just so he could protect his liege, Joshua, in times of adversity. The Duke is impressed by Cain's loyalty toward Joshua. Duke Agnes receives a letter from the Sten family, which he opens, but he says it's finally begun. The Swallow Empire is a great nation that takes up much of the Egrant continent. Due to its vast plains, which are greatest in their horseback art, they have been plagued with a single problem, which is the independence of the Thran Principality. A meeting between the Emperor, Duke, Knights, and Senior Prime Minister of the Swallow Empire is in progress as they decide to attack the million forces of Thran in order to capture the place they consider their territory. The Emperor stops them from doing so and says that there will be no action taken unless they first receive movement from the other side. Agares comes to meet Joshua and warn him of what he might be indulging himself in. He warns Joshua not to meet the Araxia Circle, since they will destroy his life. Joshua reveals Agares' secret about his brother being killed by Araxia. Agares is confused as to how Joshua knows so much about him. Agares also reveals to Joshua the fact that Veron has been running the Araxia Circle, which consists of all the elites that exploit those below them. In the exclusive room of the Circle, Araxia, the members are discussing some of the latest updates regarding the Academy. As they discuss Joshua, Veron tells the rest that he's been beaten up by Joshua himself, so he knows how strong Joshua is. They decide to recruit Joshua and make him a part of their circle, as he would be of more help than anybody else. Veron can't seem to tolerate Joshua at any cost and would do anything to get rid of him. Joshua has been summoned by the headmaster and is concerned, as he did not want to create or expect any of the chaos that has been created because of Amaru. A mysterious man, who is apparently the Black Wind, has come with an important message from the Emperor that he needs to relay to Joshua. He quotes the precise words of the Emperor, who is basically asking Joshua to join the Imperial Knight Order, and, if needed, he will also write him a recommendation letter. If Joshua still doesn't accept his offer, he will make sure Joshua gets expelled from the Academy and get him into the Imperial Knights Order. Joshua is impressed with the Emperor's vivacious personality. Meanwhile, Amaru is physically abusing Icarus in the hallway. Icarus is helpless, as is Agares, who can only scream to make the boys stop. As Agares intervenes to help his friend, Amaru reminds him of his older brother, who was also killed by them. Veron tells them that he'll capture them as hostages and call Joshua. Agares gets flashbacks of when these cruel nobles abused his brother. He runs towards Veron to strike at him, but Amaru smacks him and pushes him to the ground, warning him to stop Joshua, or they'll be humiliating their parents next. Joshua shows up right away and tells them that they will pay for humiliating and hurting his friends. Veron responds by warning him to not attack, or he'll do worse to Icarus and Agares as well as their families and put it all on him. Joshua stands still, unreactive. Veron shows Joshua the Dawn Ring that Joshua had taken earlier. Veron puts an element on the ring and turns into an even stronger person with high-level mana. Veron has managed to turn into a skilled B rank and threatens to kill Icarus if Joshua tries to hurt him. Veron has now triggered Joshua, and Joshua uses his Dawn Ring to determine his family's power. Joshua uses the Dawn Ring to get into a strong, immense, and powerful man who had armor with a pattern on it. As he stands, everyone clearly looks at the symbol of the Agnes Duke's family and are shocked. Amaru says that Babel has already graduated. Who is this young boy pretending to be from the Agnes family? Amaru, Veron, and the other boys are surprised at what just happened, and it takes them a while to process as they question everything. Joshua is enraged at the earlier events and says he won't forgive Veron this time. Amaru tells Joshua to not create more rivalry as it will be hard for them to deal with so many enemies in the future. Joshua says that only the one who committed the act will be punished and threatens to have others leave. They all make excuses and leave. Joshua strikes at Varen, and they seem intimidated by him. Joshua is impressed with Icarus's intelligence as they depart and wants to make sure Icarus helps him in the future. At the Swallow Empire, King Anthony, who dedicated his life for the principality's independence, passed away at the age of 72 and asked Aravis to look after the empire and his daughter. Aravis says he'll dedicate his life to Tharn and its independence. Joshua is contemplating leaving the academy and joining the Imperial Knights Order. Joshua encounters one of the 7 magicians of the Magic Tower, the Thunderseat Jack Steropet. He says he has come to take Bronto back from Joshua. Joshua asks him to follow as he leads the way. He takes him somewhere away from human existence. Joshua said he did it on purpose and that he wouldn't hand Bronto over to the magician. Joshua uses his aura explosion skills to attack the magician, but he realizes that he is not as powerful or qualified as the magician. As they get into a fight, the magician believes Joshua is using just a spear to fight him back and realizes that it's an artifact. Joshua's strength and energy force the magician to the ground as he makes fun of his spear. The Thunderseat magician, Jack Steropes, is confident he'll defeat Joshua and take Bronto home. Joshua, however, is adamant and won't give up at any cost. Joshua uses his techniques to attack Jack, but he seems unmoved and unaffected by them. Joshua wants to ensure that he maintains an adequate level of tension while keeping his head cool so as not to make Jack feel affected by any of the energies being thrown at him. Jack is amazed at the control Joshua has over his mana and realizes that Joshua's mana density is high. Jack uses his energies to strike at him, but Joshua keeps dodging to protect himself. The endless attacks by Jack make Joshua think that he can't keep dodging for too long. As he tackles it head-on, he seems not to be affected by it, which surprises Jack, as nobody has ever survived getting hit by 4th-class magic. Joshua sees lighting spheres all around him. Jack wants him to hand Bronto to him for the last time, or else he'll attack him with endless lightning spheres. Joshua doesn't want to give up. Jack uses all his magic techniques to attack and annihilate Joshua, but Joshua still keeps a confident and unaffected face. Joshua asks Lugia, the spear, why he's not attacking Jack, and is told that Jack possesses powers that surpass his own and there's no way they can defeat him. Joshua does not despair and says he's never been defeated and has taken on challenges that were impossible to complete, which is why he'll do anything to survive and defeat Jack Steropes. As Jack's techniques don't stop, he uses the Rune Flare method to strike at Joshua. Joshua manages to strike back with his magic spear in stage 3. Joshua throws his spear at him, making him fall to the ground. Jack gets unconscious after saying divine power and demonic energy. Joshua believes he got lucky and managed to survive mainly because Jack let his guard down. The spear reminds Joshua to cultivate his energy before Bronto devours Jack's mana and goes berserk. At the academy, all the teachers and professors have gathered to talk about the latest event. Joshua revealing his identity. They say the students are concerned about who Joshua is and why he has been hiding his identity. The professor says that they might set an example by ripping out the roots of special admissions if they expel Joshua. The others say that they don't have enough evidence to prove Joshua guilty and expel him, but the professor reminds them that he attacked Varen and severely injured him, which is reason enough to expel Joshua. Professor Kane expresses how Joshua should actually be praised for putting an end to the humiliation and brutality that the weaker groups faced at the hands of the stronger ones. Not everyone agrees with what he says, but Duke Arden Agnes shows up and says that he agrees with Professor Kane. He also has Count Ares Sten with him. The current head of the Sten family and Duke Arden von Agnes have arrived at the academy to inquire about the latest events taking place. Duke Agnes says if his child has committed a mistake, then it's mandatory for him to inquire about it. The Duke tells them that if Joshua is responsible, he will be punished for it. Professor Cecil explains to the Duke how the academy is a place where children are supposed to learn, but if someone of the Duke's stature is here, then their options will be greatly influenced by him. The headmaster tries to stop them from expressing their opinions in such a straightforward manner, but other professors talk in support of Cecil too. The Duke tells them that he's not here to support his child, but to ask for forgiveness from the Count, since his son Joshua had committed actions that were disrespectful of the Sten family. The Count states that he doesn't forgive Joshua, and the Duke offers to first meet Joshua and then decide whether he'd want to forgive him or not. The Duke also states that he wouldn't have a problem with the Academy punishing Joshua for his actions or even expelling him if required. As we read further, Joshua is still lying on the ground, trying to process all that happened earlier. He realizes he has defeated Jack's therapies, which was something close to impossible. Joshua feels excruciating pain in his entire body, making it hard for him to stand. He hears Lugia asking him to pull himself together. He feels that the growth ability of Bronto has started to work as he feels a lot stronger and bigger. Lugia also tells Joshua that his body will fully develop in 5 years. Joshua is curious as to who Lugia really is and how it has the power to control both divine and demonic power within Joshua's body. Lugia reminds Joshua of the contract they made the moment he returned to his past. Agares is standing in the hallway and Amaru shows up. Amaru reminds Agares of the way Joshua revealed his identity just to save him. Agares is reminded of his brother, who was chased out of the academy and horribly treated. He screams, saying that he feels helpless in front of people of absolute power and does not know what to do or how to protect himself or those he loves. Amaru stays quiet, but then expresses how he has always been jealous of Agares and the bond he shared with his brother. He was envious of how they got along so well while he was deprived of affection from his brother. Amaru puts his hand forth as a sign of camaraderie towards Agares and asks him to protect his friend Joshua Agnes. Duke Agnes and Count Ari are talking about what has happened recently with Joshua's invitation from the Emperor. Count Ari informs the Duke of the Thral Empire that he has defeated Duke Altsma with an army of 50,000. Rumor has it that the biggest reason why Thrawn could destroy the Swallows' empire is because of a man named Uravis, the Knight of Prominence. Joshua stands, wondering what Lugia last said to him. He sees Icarus and Agares running towards him with a bunch of other students. Icarus tells Joshua that the entire school's students have gathered to stop the school from punishing Joshua for the way he defeated Verone. Joshua has the entire school by his side, while the Araxia group only has a couple of people. Joshua is overwhelmed by the support he receives. In the academy meeting room, Professor Segadam convinces the headmaster to expel or punish Joshua, and in return, he may as well get key positions in the academy. One of the professors shows up completely nervous and out of words as he explains that the children of the school have gathered to support Joshua and to oppose the Araxia Circle. All the students have gathered to protest against Araxia and are shouting to disband the circle. Amaru asks the professor to clear the mess that has been created before Araxia gets disbanded. Professor Kane and Segurdum are caught up in an aggressive argument where Kane believes that Araxia should be banned as it has caused great damage to the academy and its people in the past. Joshua says he'll clean up all the filth in the academy before he leaves. Amaru smirks and warns Joshua of the consequences he'll face when he's chased out of the academy. He warns Joshua not to ruin his family's honor. Joshua doesn't care what anyone says, and he threatens to show each member of Araxia the results of their cruel actions. The headmaster tells Segridam that he no longer cares about his position, and that he must stop the wrongdoings of the children. Duke Agnes and Count Ari turn up. They had been listening to the conversation between the children and Joshua. Duke Agnes doesn't take their brawl seriously and states that fights among children should stay between them. He then asks Joshua to meet him. At the capital of the Swallow Empire, the Emperor asks about Altsma. He is told that Altsma has faced more psychological than physical harm. Duke Albert, the Imperial Knight Captain, says Alstom has brought disgrace to the Empire as he couldn't defeat Thran with twice the huge force as the opponent. Everyone supports Albert and says that Altsma should take responsibility for his loss. The Emperor reminds them that it's not just Altsma who's at fault, but all of them, since they all lacked information about the opponent. They then come up with the idea of sending more soldiers and at least 2 masters. The Emperor asks them to wait for the next opportunity, since all the other empires are already focused on them. They state that Thrawn, in the meantime, is trying to convince other empires to hesitate on being diplomatic with the Swallow Empire. A knight has come to inform the Emperor that Thrawn has announced its next king, which is Uravis, the Knight of Prominence, who will also hold his wedding ceremony with the previous king's daughter soon. Duke Agnes asks Joshua about the decree he received from the Emperor. Joshua tells the Duke about his decision to join the Imperial Knight Order. The Duke leaves, telling Joshua to take care of himself. Count Ari is also present and wants to talk to Joshua about something important. As the Duke leaves, the Count asks Joshua if he still considers rapiers trash, and Joshua responds by saying he doesn't think they're trash, but that they can't surpass spears. The Count is triggered by Joshua's statement and uses his negative energies to intimidate him, but Joshua withstands it and walks toward the Count, piercing through his spirit, as the Count explains. The Count is now aware of the 10-year-old Joshua's strength and mana levels. The Duke enters and tells them to stop with the arguments. He allows Joshua to join the Imperial Knight Order, but initially raises him to the rank of 3rd Battalion. Joshua is confused but accepts what the Duke says. At the Agnes mansion, Vanessa is anxious and concerned as Babel has been called to the Imperial Palace. She curses Joshua for ruining her son's life. Chiffon says he'll go to Arkady, the capital, but is stopped by Vasesa. She is concerned the Duke might find out and punish Chiffon. Chiffon says there's nothing to worry about and assures Vanessa that he's doing it all for her. Joshua is in the backyard regaining his strength and practicing while he hears the footsteps of someone approaching him. He thinks he might just be hallucinating, but as he goes further, he sees Zero, his informant from the Moon Doors. Joshua asks Zero for any new updates, and Zero responds that he's going out of town, which is why he won't be able to find information about Draxia Bel Grace for some time. Joshua knows Zero is going to the Thrawn Empire, and as he mentions it, Zero is surprised at Joshua's observation. Joshua tells Zero that he may also take time to find the red coin, the commission he promised to give him earlier. Zero, however, tells Joshua that Draxia Bel has a relationship with the Avalon Empire. Joshua isn't surprised, as he already knows this piece of information. Zero goes on to inform Joshua about the relationship between Marcus Britain and Draxia. Joshua connects the dots and says that Emperor Marcus is trying to chase out the current emperor of the Swallow Empire, Verona Bel Grace, and place Draxia in his place. Count Ari stands with a sword in his hand and insults the current emperor of the Swallow Empire. The emperor's soldiers march to fight the Count for his unforgivable words. They attack him but are defeated, falling back to the ground with broken shields. The soldiers use a technique to fight back, but the Count is not affected. Meanwhile, Duke Tremblin, one of the top 3 most influential men in the Avalon Empire, shows off his diving strike from above the sky. Both of them discuss trivial matters, and Count Ari realizes that Duke Tremblin is not as much fun as Duke Agnes, in spite of his skills. Ari mentions Draxia Bel, and upon hearing his name, Tremblin asks him to be careful of what he says. Count Ari says they have got to lose if they play along with Draxia's game. The Duke reminds him of His Majesty's orders, but Ari seems to not be moved by any of them. The Duke remembers Evergrant's words when he said that Count Ari is unreliable and could run off at any moment. At the academy, Icarus offers to be Joshua's subordinate and serve him, and Joshua is confused as Icarus is a noble commoner. Icarus explains how Joshua will be the next best thing, surpassing all of Avalon's knights in strength, and that to serve him would be a big deal. Joshua is surprised, but he responds by saying, "I refuse." As Joshua refuses, Icarus is bewildered, as he expected Joshua to approve of his wish. Icarus says he has nothing to gain from being his servant, but just to prove his own worth. Joshua explains why he doesn't want him to be his servant, as he expects more from Icarus. He doesn't want to waste him by trying to protect and look after him for his entire life. He wants to stay in the academy and stop any corruption or wrongdoing that may take place. Joshua explains how he doesn't want his people to work for him, and Icarus agrees to stay in the academy and change its ways. The Swallow Empire's 3rd princess, Verona Bel Grace, talks to her father and realizes he's concerned about something. Upon inquiry, he expresses that he is concerned about ceding the empire over to his brother, Demero, who has not shown up in 10 years. Rumor has it that he could have died. She consoles her father and reminds him of the times when everyone was genuinely happy upon his becoming the emperor. She expresses how proud she is of her father. While they are both conversing, a soldier hurries over, shouting that the border guards have been attacked and executed by the Thrain authority. At the residence of the Imperial Palace, Evergreen meets the magic town master, Iron Dun Pere. He asks the town master's reason for calling him. Iron asks him about his life at the Empire, which he explains is good, and also informs Iron that he has joined the 4th Prince Van Britain, whom he believes will succeed to the throne. Iron tells him that his decision may be proved wrong, as Van may not succeed in the future. Iron then tells him that the Thunder Seat of the 7 magicians, Jack Steropes, has been killed, and he offers Evergrant to take his position. Evergrant refuses, and Ian figures out he's doing it because of the Imperial Treasury. Ian also asks Evergrant to inquire about who killed Jack. As Joshua enters the Imperial Kingdom, he is not allowed inside by the knights. He says he has come to apply for the Battle of Bircher, which primarily is when one can enter by stealing the spot of the knight they fight with, and the ones in charge of this battle are known for their cruelty. Joshua says he'll rise to the 3rd seat, obtain the seat of a battalion commander, and acquire that from the Imperial Treasury. Joshua is standing, reminiscing about past times, when he hears someone approaching. She introduces herself as Sir Ciaran Van Britain. At the Swallow Empire, the Emperor asks his men to overlook the matter for a while until they find the true identity of the enemy. One of the knights shouts that they have already confirmed the presence of the Crest of Thran on the scene. A man enters the room and is introduced as Prince Lucifer. He greets the Emperor. He then expresses how the knights and nobles are useless and have nothing better to do than accuse Thran of attacking them. He says Thran is already busy with its new emperor and wouldn't commit such a fatal mistake. He assumes it could be the Avalon Empire taking them. At the great Imperial Palace of Avalon, the Black Wind reports the Emperor's death. The Duke is concerned someone might have figured out their plan. He asks about the killer, but nobody knows of him yet. The Emperor is also informed of Beeg's daughters joining the Academy, which greatly concerns him. The Duke is making sure Kane has the ability to protect Joshua in the future and is being trained by the Duke himself. The Duke is informed of Joshua's joining the Imperial Knight Order. The Duke orders Kane to spar with him, and Kane is concerned he might get defeated and hurt badly. Duke Agnes is simply trying to express his anger and wrath by fighting with Kane. After the sparring ends, he asks the Barons' heads about the boys from 2 of the 12 families humiliated and defeated by Joshua. He informs the Duke that the Marquis family might send them an official letter since their only son, Veron, has been a victim of Joshua's brawl. The Duke is concerned the Marquis family might discuss the matter at the Great Noble Conference, which may be very humiliating. Duke says he can't scold Joshua for doing good work and standing against what's wrong. Baron Head also informs him that Babel will be arriving in Akkadi since he has been called by the Emperor himself. Meanwhile, Babel is on his way to the Imperial Palace, and Chiffon assures him of his strong position in the Empire. He then asks Babel a bizarre question, which confuses him. He asks what Babel would do if he found out that his father, the Duke Agnes, was not his real father. Chiffon lies and says he's asking for a knight who is stuck in a similar situation. Babel responds that if it were him, he would have loved and respected both his fathers equally and done his best in life, because that was the only way he could grow strong and mature. Chiffon is impressed by his response, and with that, they reach the palace. While Joshua stands from across the wall, he talks to Vansa Ciaran, the pure-blooded princess. Her father, Marcus Britain, is a man who killed all his people, those that inherited the imperial blood and anybody who opposed him, which is why he's known as the Sovereign of Blood. He birthed Vansa Ciaran for political objectives, and unfortunately she was born blind. The Master keeps a watch on her mainly because she possesses a quality that looks through even those who have reached the Master Realm. She sobs when asked about her tragic fate by Joshua. As she leaves, Joshua says he'll meet her later. The time is not right for now. At the Emperor's Marcus's Anna Grace, the War God's daughter has come to meet the Emperor. The Emperor asks about the War God's plan in trying to tackle Prince Lucifer defending the Swallow Empire. Anna says she's uncertain, which triggers the Emperor, and he shows his wrath by releasing his energy, which affects Anna. He is angry for the fact that he helped them both, and now they have turned their backs on him and are not fulfilling their promises. She apologizes for her words and says it won't happen again. He says he'll promise a Duke peerage instead of the Marquis peerage. Anna is enraged as she thinks to herself that the border guard's killing was a waste of everything and merely an amusement for the Emperor. She responds, saying she'd say yes, but is uncertain that her father would agree with his offer. The Duke says they don't have a choice and must come up with a plan soon. Evergrant has come to the place where Jack Steropes were killed. He realizes that Jack has been killed by someone who possesses Bronto. Princess Van is curious to know about Joshua Sanders, and as she inquisitively asks Ellen, she is told that Joshua is the 10-year-old son of Duke Agnes. She continues to tell Van that Joshua possesses extraordinary qualities and has the potential to become one of the 9 stars of the Empire. Joshua enters the Imperial Night Drill Hall and realizes the place hasn't changed a lot. The 11th and 12th battalions of knights are having a spar and are being cheered on by their supporters. While attacking each other, they are also messing around and cursing at each other. During their banter, Joshua is heard laughing at them. As he approaches, they ask what he's doing in a place where little brats are not allowed. Joshua doesn't say anything, but rather uses his dawn ring to reveal who he is. As he does so, he tells them that he has come to apply for the bloody Battle of Bircher. They recognize Joshua, as he is considered the little star of the continent and can wield mana at the age of 10. Joshua is well informed of the rules of the battle, as he expounds that the challengers of the battle earn the position of Imperial Knight upon victory. The knight who loses will be stripped of his position. He'll promise to take full responsibility for the consequences. He then states that the 11th and 12th battalions must comply. As Joshua challenges them, they step back, making excuses in order to avoid fighting. They don't want to hurt the son of Duke Agnes, knowing the consequences they'll face. Joshua realizes how weak and frail they are in their strength. To trigger, or more precisely, motivate them, he calls them cowards and humiliates them. They then step forward to show their real strength to Joshua, regardless of what happens later. The knights are shocked at the things Joshua possesses: a dawn ring, an aura, and an artifact. The knight challenging him says Joshua has simply received it all from his family and doesn't possess true qualities of his own. Joshua challenges him again and makes sure he doesn't leave the battlefield. The knight was triggered upon being called a coward. He attacked Joshua using his crank mana and utmost strength. As he does so, he believes Joshua has been intimidated and left, but he realizes that Joshua still stands strong and is ready to fight. Viper Bison, the 12th Battalion Vice Captain, shows up and says that he will be Joshua's opponent. The knights are concerned, so they try to stop him. He shows camaraderie and says he will protect his comrades, even if it means losing his position. Joshua is impressed and says that, in his past life, he was highly protected by this man, and he is delighted to have stood for a spar with him again. Joshua screams, saying he will make it in 5 years and ensure the 11th and 12th battalions are considered the strongest. Babel reaches the Imperial Palace, and the Emperor greets him. He tells the Emperor he'll be turning 15 this year, which amazes the Emperor as he says that nobody has reached the B rank level in their teens in the Avalon Empire. Babel is reminded of Joshua, and as he mentions him, the Emperor tells Babel that Joshua can never be Avalon's treasure. The Emperor then gives Babel an elixir, which he must drink to increase his mana. As he drinks it, he falls to the ground, and the Emperor goes to tell Babel that he must not lose his seat of succession to Joshua. 5 years later, Joshua has been appointed as the 12th Battalion commander, and he walks with pride, summoning the knights. When Joshua returned, the Egrant continent seemed to be at peace. However, there were still conspiracies that started to bloom. The 3 empires on the continent were considered superpowers. Marcus van Britten, the Emperor of the Avalon Empire, joined forces with Draxia Bell, who was the Knight of the Swallow Kingdom, and made bad blood with the subordinate county of Swallow, the Thrain Principality. Emperor Verona of the Swallow Empire found out about their plan and still managed to prevent war. The 3rd superpower, the Holy Kingdom of Hubal, was electing its pope. 5 years later, Joshua shows up at the first prince's birthday. Young ladies Cheryl and Cox have also arrived and are not allowed by the children of the Marquis family. Natasha, and Jaewog. They are humiliated by them and are told that their family is on the verge of destruction, but they are indifferent to it. Joshua enters and escorts both Cheryl and Cox inside. Cheryl recognizes Joshua and asks him to dance with her at the ball, but Joshua declines, saying he has to guard the castle. Joshua reminds her that he is Joshua Sanders from the Barron family and the Agnes family. While Joshua stands alone guarding the laces, he feels a presence and asks it to reveal itself. As she shows up, Joshua is aware of her identity. She is Aisha Sethrophy and has come to assassinate the first prince. She is shocked that Joshua knows her identity. As she attacks him, Joshua lies, saying he's the Black Dragon, and she gets intimidated and apologizes for her mistake. He then asks her to leave the place. She is the assassin queen who was also a part of Joshua's life in the past. The ball has begun, and everyone is curious about who the prince will dance with. They talk about the Pontier family as they see Cheryl. Cheryl feels disappointed and sad as she realizes everyone is giving her a degrading look. The privies, Kaiser Van Britten and Caesarin Van Britten, made their way inside. Kaiser greets everyone and Caesarin is thinking about Joshua. Kaiser sees Cheryl and approaches to greet her. He asks about her family and says he's been worried about their family. Kaiser then offers to dance with her, but she ponders over the fact that she can't afford to make more enemies in the palace since all the wealthy noble children have their eyes on Kaiser. She refuses him, and as Kaiser asks for the reason, Joshua enters, saying he is Cheryl's partner for tonight. Joshua greets Kaiser, and everyone's impressed by Joshua and the way he has maintained peace in the Empire for 5 years. Joshua apologizes to Kaiser for having Cheryl dance with him. Jaewog enters, asking Joshua to not be discourteous towards the prince, but is shunned by Joshua. Prince Kaiser says he is righteous and doesn't want to make a fuss at the ball. He asks everyone to enjoy. Joshua dances with Cheryl, and he says that he helped her because of a promise they made earlier when she handed him the symbol of her family. Outside the Imperial Palace, Cain, who preferred to be Joshua's subordinate, has arrived and seems angry. He says he's been suffering for the past few years at the hands of Joshua, while Joshua is enjoying a banquet in the Imperial Palace. Joshua and Cheryl are raised for their looks and are considered beautiful people. As they finish, Cheryl leaves and Joshua encounters Caesarin. She calls his name out, but Joshua disappears. The next day, all the knights are in a hurry as their boss, Icarus of the Harvest family, appears. They congratulate him on his early graduation as he enters the academy. His brother is concerned about where he'd go after this, and Icarus says he made that decision 5 years ago. While at the Imperial Palace, Cain makes his way inside, but is stopped by the knights. Joshua sees him and asks the knights to let him in. Cain screams at Joshua, telling him how he has wasted his youth practicing swordsmanship and trying to reach that stage. Joshua apologizes and is informed that he has another guest outside the palace. Joshua goes and finds Icarus waiting for him. He's surprised at Icarus's profuse change in a span of 5 years. Icarus reminds him of the promise they made years ago about appointing him as his strategist. Joshua remembers and approves. Cain also joins them, and they plan on working together in the future. Joshua's plan begins with asking the two of them to first go see the Pontier family. At the Imperial Palace, the Emperor is concerned that there is no one strong enough to represent the Avalon Empire in the Master Battle and prove they are the absolute power among all empires. Meanwhile, Joshua enters and expresses that he would like to take part in the Master Battle to be held in Reinhardt. The Emperor tells Joshua he can't qualify for the battle as it requires someone with high strength. The Emperor asks him to prove himself first. Joshua says he has a condition in case he wins the battle. Everyone is shocked at his gutsy behavior in keeping conditions in front of the Emperor. The Emperor lets him express his condition as long as it does not involve leaving the Imperial Knights. Joshua expresses that his condition is to leave the Imperial Knight. Joshua reminds them of the rule that he could leave any time he wanted since he enrolled through the Battle of Bircher. The Emperor uses his energies to test Joshua and realizes that Joshua has reached the realm of mastery. He lets Joshua go and return with satisfactory results, and if he does succeed, his request will be accepted. Icarus goes to meet Cheryl at the Pontier Empire. Icarus introduces himself and says he's honored to meet her. She sees the symbol of the Agnes family and thinks that Duke Agnes has sent them to help the Pontier family. Icarus and Kane tell her that it is not Duke Agnes, but Joshua Sanders who has sent them to assist the family. Joshua stands, wondering how he'll be able to leave the Imperial Night without anyone being suspicious. He encounters Duke Agnes, and the Duke asks Joshua if he resents him for giving power to Babel when he is the one who deserved it in terms of strength. Joshua says he is indifferent to that matter, and the only thing he resents about the Duke is the way he treated him and his mother. Joshua further says that he no longer resents the Duke as his mother is being taken care of very well and is treated better now. Joshua's knights show up, questioning him about the news of his leaving the Imperial Knights. Joshua tells them that he's leaving for a private matter. Bison intervenes, saying he'd want to help Joshua in the future, but is stopped. All the other knights, whom Joshua referred to as his precious people, say they will wait for him until the end to return. They show respect, and Joshua leaves. Joshua reminisces about how he has achieved all that he ever wanted, except for one thing. Destroying all foundations, created and polished by Kaiser Van Britten. He failed, but at least he found the third person helping Kaiser. He must talk to the Moon Doors and gather information about them. Critian, the paladin of the Hubalt Empire, is leaving to go to the main battle, and Chrysler, one of the 9 stars, comes to bid farewell to him. He warns him of Uravis, who is the current king of Thrain. Icarus and Kane are leaving the Pontier Palace and are told by Cheryl that the warp gate can't be used, which is why they need to go directly from the mountains. At the Arkady warp gate, Joshua learns that they can't use the gate that connects Reinhard and Arkady. The man tells Joshua he'll warp him into a hybrid castle in the Trembling Duchy. Joshua finds out that the Magic Tower is also participating in the Master Battle. Joshua reaches the hybrid camp and is greeted by the Lord of the Hybrid County. The county asks Joshua to join him, since the monarchy has ordered someone to look after Joshua. Joshua says he needs to first finish off a task and will return until dinner time. He says he's going to the Mercenary Guild. Draxia, Grace, Belle, and Kaiser Van Britten are conversing, admitting that they have already begun with their plan to destroy Joshua. Joshua is at the Mercenary Guild to get a silver plaque, but is denied since he doesn't have 2-star requests or a bronze plaque. Joshua is agitated as the man knows who he is and still isn't issuing a plaque to him. The man agrees and says that he'll hand it over only if Joshua accepts his request. He gives Joshua a 5-star request, which Joshua finds difficult. He asks Joshua to depart now and read the scroll handed out to him for any details. Joshua leaves and tells the man he expects a reward in return, which he will tell the man when he returns. Lady Cheryl is informed the Duke of Pontier has collapsed, and they must end their campaign and fill the Duke's vacancy as soon as possible. They move out of the place, leaving their baggage. As they move to defend themselves, they are attacked by an unknown man who ties Kane and Icarus up and tries to take Lady Cheryl away. Icarus manages to save Lady Cheryl. They are now surrounded by more men and feel helpless. Kane manages to jump from the top and carries out an explosion which somehow intimidates the men, and they plan to first kill Kane. Joshua, meanwhile, is completing his 5-star request. He is considered a newbie and treated like one. He is supposed to fight the 5-string men, as well as the undead monsters like Dullahan, which cannot be killed unless aura or B-rank mana is used. As they get attacked, they see a 4th-class magic master fighting the monsters. The 4th-class magic master participating in a 2-star request is Iselin Jin Rebrecca. The branch manager, Aiden, shows you how to fight the deadly monsters. As he does so, more of the monsters arrive, too strong for any of the knights to defeat. They run and retreat, but Joshua stands still in the face of all the monsters about to attack him. Joshua is adamant he will fight and defeat them, which he clearly proves as he strikes at each one of them with his magic spear. Everyone seems to have been taken aback by Joshua's strength and power. As they question him about his extraordinary skills, Joshua responds, "Don't question too much, you'll only be hurting yourself." At Aiden's tent, they discuss their plans and how they will now subjugate the Lich. Joshua asks them to depart, but Aiden says there is an identity confirmation process they must go through in order to depart, as there is a territorial war going on in the Rebrecca estate. Immediately after Iselin shows up and informs them of the massacre by the Marquis Cromwells, Lady Cherry, Icarus, and Cox manage to escape and run, but are found by the man trying to follow them. As the Pontiers and Icarus are followed by the man to the river, they can no longer manage to run. A soldier of the Pontiers family saves them by throwing an arrow at the man, making him unconscious. They reach the palace and are escorted in by the soldiers, who are grateful they arrived safely. Lady Cheryl wants to take over her father's position and prove to the vassals that she is the Lord's princess. She goes to the conference room and asks the vassals to tell her all the details. They inform her that the route used for bringing supplies has been used. If the reserves run out, everyone may die of famine. Lady Cheryl can't think of anything to solve the problem, so she seeks advice from Icarus. The vassals disapprove of Icarus assisting them in private matters of an empire. Icarus is adamant about proving his skills to this man. Icarus tells them that the Cromwells will soon attack them, which turns out to be true as the knight informs them of the 30,000 knights attacking them from the Cromwells. Their true goal, he says, is the Denis River. The Pontiers have been attacked, and they must prepare their troops. Baron Anna is asked to comply with Icarus's strategy, which agitates him. Cheryl praises Icarus for being able to silence all the stubborn nobles. They then discuss how, in the early stages of the war, both sides were pretty even. But when the mercenary king joined, things started to escalate. Joshua is informed of the Marquis Cromwells decimating empires one after the other. They first attacked Count Rebecca and later started a war with the Duke of Pontiers. Joshua is suspicious about Marcus van Britten being involved in the decisions made by Marcus Cromwell. Aidan says the Cromwells might attack the Agnes Empire if they are successful in defeating the Pontiers. Aidan asks Joshua for a personal request to take care of Iselin. Christian, the paladin of the Hubalt Empire, is approaching the castle that he believes has been ruined more than expected. He is not allowed inside the territory and stays out, wondering how the Liege and Avalon empires are related. He then reaches Castle Reb and is encountered by a huge force of monsters. He manages to fight them but knows he's screwed. Christian fights and defeats as many as he can, but they seem to be countless. As he uses his holy cross and energies, he kills all of them. As he prays for the source of evil to reveal itself, he sees a monster, presumably the Leech, approaching him. He is shocked and does not know what to do. Aidan says he's visiting the Reb castle, and as he departs, Iselin tells him to return as soon as things get complicated, as a Hubalt follower infiltrated the Reb castle and went missing. While Joshua and Iselin are together, she thanks him for taking her under his protection since Aidan's went away. Joshua considerately asks her about her father's disappearance. She gets upset and states that the estate is on fire and everyone is in danger of being killed. He sacrificed his life so he could buy her time to escape. As time passed, people began to forget the past events. So Iselin decided to help the survivors. Joshua instantly stood and ran, saying he felt the presence of Kaiser's damn dog. Joshua can sense the existence of a strange and eerie creature, and goes on to chase it in order to find out more about it. He is followed by Aidan, who stops him, but Joshua asks him to wait as he has something to confirm first. Joshua runs as fast as possible, and as he slows down, he finds a symbol and realizes that he has sensed the presence of someone with an A rank or higher aura fighting. He witnesses an anti-magic field around him, and he sees a man, supposedly Christian, with both his hands tied. He asks the man if he's the owner of the rune, and the man replies by telling him to look back as the Death Knight approaches to attack Joshua. Joshua manages to escape the attack. The Death Knight with its demonic energies points at Lugia, Joshua's spear, and says it's mine. Joshua is bewildered and somewhat frightened by the immense creature. As the fight begins between Joshua and the Death Knight, we witness that it wasn't Joshua, but the demonic spear fighting. As they fight, the Death Knight pulls out a wolf's fang blade, which surprises Joshua, who is still possessed by the demonic energies. At the Swallow Empire, Archduke Lucifer enters, telling Verona Greysbell that he is no good. He tells Verona of Duke Alcimus's death and says viciously that it's time for her to go as well. Lucifer assassinates the Emperor of the Swallow Empire, who always wished to maintain peace. Meanwhile, Joshua tries to get rid of the Death Knight, and as he does so, He talks to him, saying that he must have chosen himself to have taken this path. Whatever the reason may be for the Death Knight turning into one, Joshua asks if he can also go along with him down the path. Demero Belgrace, Veron's brother, expresses that he does not have greed for the Swallow Empire and appoints Lucifer to Verona's position. A Death Knight requires the body and soul of the best knight. The Death Knight Joshua encounters is basically Duke Altsma, who has been turned into a Death Knight of demonic power and energy. He asks Joshua to kill him as he realizes he made the wrong decision by agreeing to be made one. Joshua says he'll take control of him from the one who turned him into a Death Knight instead of killing him. In return for that, Joshua will borrow his strength. Altsma agrees and says it'd be an honor for him to walk alongside the continent's greatest genius. Joshua transfers control and starts gaining all the strength. Aiden and other members are planning to go find Joshua inside, hoping he is fine, as Aiden says he can sense a strong demonic energy from the place. The Knights of the Hubalt Empire have arrived to take over Castle Reb and ask Aiden to leave the place. He expresses concern that their friend Joshua is outside the castle and may be in trouble. As they argue, a strong and dangerous energy comes from inside the castle, frightening everyone present. As they look closely, they see Joshua with Christian lying unconscious on top of his shoulder. The Knights shout to stop Joshua as they sense strong demonic energy from him. Joshua is somewhat scared, as he was unaware of the effects of absorbing the Death Knight's energy. In between the chaos, Syrian, the saintess of the Holy Empire, speaks, saying they can find out if Joshua is a demon by using the holy artifact, the Tear of God, from the Hermes Temple. She asks Joshua if he accepts the ruling. She tells Joshua she'll help him get out of the situation easily, but Joshua questions her for doing so. She says she wants to make a deal with him in an inappropriate manner, contradicting her saintly position. This angers Joshua, and he manages to snatch the artifact from her, asking everyone to move further away from him. As Joshua takes the artifact, he manages to throw it to the ground as it breaks into pieces, leaving all the Hubalt followers enraged. Soon after, they all witness the wings of Michael, the Archangel, appear on Joshua. They all ask about Joshua's real identity, and whether he really is a follower of Hubalt. Joshua clears the air, saying he's simply Joshua Sanders. Joshua also makes them question if their artifact is really a holy one, since it is too easily damaged by a non-member of the Hubaltian Empire. He asks them to look after their companion, Christian, who could die at any moment. The men realize that the demonic energy was actually coming from their own companion, Christian. They are ordered to take him to the nearby temple and leave everything aside. Joshua and Aiden also decide to get to their unfinished tasks. At the Magic Tower, there are discussions going on regarding the representatives chosen to fight in the Master Battle. The members are enraged by their Magic Master being in contact with Evergrant. He says that Evergrant may know information about Exarath Dick Orvis, who disappeared years ago, and no nation has found traces of him. Zereth was the only one aware of the Forest of Elves. Marcus, one of the members, says that they shouldn't trust Evergrant, but considering the relationship he had with Exarath, there might be a chance he knows about Exarath. Meanwhile, Evergrant has Exarath Orvis's body, in which he will be reborn, turn into a demonic lie, and change his name to Berber. Joshua gives Aiden a silver seal as a sign of gratitude, as he has finally found information regarding the leash and defeated the demon. They depart towards Reindart, and Aiden uses the Layfon's appearance-changing abilities to transition to his real form, the mighty Axilla. In the Cromble meeting room, the members are concerned and curious as to why the Pontiers have still not retreated, and rumor has it that the highly intelligent Icarus is helping them out. The Pontiers have figured out their plan and are ahead of everything. As the Crombles are unable to think of a rational plan to defeat the Pontiers, one of the members says they should call the Mercenary King. The Duke is enraged. He doesn't want to take outside help in times of crisis. He asks the Knights to stop the supply lines of Pontier. Soon afterwards, it is found that the Pontiers have managed to eliminate all the Knights who had gone to cut supplies. Meanwhile, at the supply area, the Pontiers are intimidated by the Crombles' army, and, as they are about to be defeated, Cain shows up to protect the Pontiers' men. Icarus and one of the nobles of Pontiers are caught up in an argument as Icarus is dubious about the noble vassal being a spy and telling Crumbles about the supply routes. The troops and supplies have safely been escorted by Kane and have arrived at the castle. An emergency alert has been sent to Pontiers as the Crumbles have frozen the Denis River and are advancing towards Pontiers. At the temple, Christian has not yet recovered, but has managed to get rid of all the demonic energy his body consumed. The mix of demonic and holy energy has caused some damage to his brain. The priest is shocked as he is informed of the earlier events involving wings appearing on Joshua. Christian may no longer be part of the master battle because he is ill. Iselin and Axula, who was previously disguised as Aiden, have arrived in Reinhard. Iselin, as Axula assumes, is agitated since Joshua couldn't escort them due to some important business. They encounter Prince Uravis, and Axula is honored to have met him and wishes to cross blades with him someday. At the representative group drawing session, it is announced that the groups for the Master Wars will soon be chosen, and if the respective representatives aren't present, a substitute should be kept. Sona Moon Terra, a representative of Terra, is excited for the evening and encounters Slack's representative of the Mercenary Guild. There is an argument over who may win the war, and everyone expects Uravis to win. As all the representatives gather, Babel has come instead of Joshua to be the representative. Uravis, representative of the Throne Principality, and Axula, representative of 10 million mercenaries, arrive. Right after Joshua Sanders makes his entrance. As Joshua returns, Babel is enraged. The rules for the Master War are read out loud, and one participant has to draw a number from a box and will be paired with the next person who chooses a number. The winner of the event will be given the right to challenge 12 superhumans and 9 stars. The winner will also be given the Hammer of Nagasine as a reward. This means that anyone winning will be given ownership of Reinhard, which belongs to no nation. After they are done picking numbers, the results are announced. Uravis has been paired with Axula, the 4th magician from the Terra Kingdom, with the 7th magician from the Magic Tower, and the opening match will be between Joshua and Babylon, the Knight of Steel. The battle will be conducted over 2 days, and all participants must be on time. 2 of the lady representatives defend Joshua as he gets called weak and fragile by some of the knights. As the grouping ends, they leave, and Babel looks at Joshua, viciously pondering how he'll eventually make him his puppet. The battle begins, and the opening match is between Joshua and Babylon. Everyone is cheering them up, and the judges of the Master War Windmill, Eden, and Hazeki are looking forward to the battle. Ali Brun Sten is also one of the judges, who is impatiently wanting to see Joshua's strength. They begin the duel, and Babylon underestimates Joshua for the spear he is carrying. He asks Joshua to make the first move. Joshua warns him, knowing the first move will be the last one. Joshua strikes at him, which surprises Babylon as he did not expect as much strength. He tries to strike back but fails. Joshua uses his techniques to strike at him again. His spear is something very important to him, and he makes sure he uses it to be victorious today. As they continue, Joshua knocks him down, and a pile of dust gathers, making it impossible for everyone to see who won. As the dust settles, they see Babylon to the ground and Joshua as always victorious. With that, he's given the title of Master. Joshua is praised and appreciated as the crowd chants his name. Everyone starts praising not only Joshua, but also his incredible spear, Lugia. Lugia speaks, saying that humans are finally admiring and recognizing its greatness. Iselin shows up, praising Joshua for his incredible vision. She calls Joshua Lord, which Joshua clarifies by saying he's no longer part of the Agnes Empire and must simply be called by his name. Joshua asks Iselin about Axula, and he responds by saying Axula is somewhat concerned as he is about to fight Uravis, one of the 12 superhumans who also owns the primordial stone magma. Meanwhile, the Crumbles are talking about Joshua's incredible strength and power at such a young age. They mention how Enable couldn't make any move due to Hubolt and Swallow Empire, but after Joshua, things may change. They are frightened Joshua might start ruling over almost all of Avalon and grow stronger, which is why they plan on getting rid of him. Iselin goes to Joshua's room in order to have a word with him. She mentions the relationship between the Mercenary King, Barbariant, and Axula. Joshua explains how mercenaries have a hierarchical system, which means they divide themselves based on skills into ranks. The mercenary kings have always helped the Cromwells in destroying the Rebrecker bloodline, and it's striking how Axula, being the strongest mercenary, helps Iselin. He must despise the king to the point where he's helping his enemies. Joshua asks Iselin how he may assist her in this matter. She says that even if Axula gets defeated by Uravis, the mercenary king, Joshua should avoid fighting him, since she cannot afford to lose more people. As she gets sentimental, Joshua embraces her, reassuring her that she won't lose anyone again. The fourth day of the battle has begun, and it's now time for the Magic Tower representative, the Tarpeian, and the Terror representative, Astello, to fight in the Master Wars. Joshua uses his energies to get the Death Knight, Duke Altsma, as he has a task for him. He asks the Death Knight to check up on his fellows in the Pontier estate, who should have arrived by now but haven't. As the fight begins between the Tarpeian and Astello, everyone cheers for them. Astello begins by using his fire spells, which the crowd believes Theta won't be able to bear. However, Theta had already created a wind wall, which protected him from any kind of dangerous attack from Astello. Astello is shocked at the way Theta managed to escape from his attack. Theta blocks all of Astellos' attacks and pushes him off the field. The winner is the storm seat of the 7 magicians, the Tarpeian. Iselin is surprised at Theta's power and warns Joshua that Theta is a strong 6th-class master who has endless strength. Joshua ponders whether it would be a worthwhile experience to fight with a Magic Tower magician. The next match begins between Uravis and Axula. As the crowd chants their names, Iselin is worried Axula might get nervous and mess up. Axula begins by using his bare hands to strike at Uravis. Uravis, in return, uses his sword to defend himself by releasing sword aura. Uravis is surprised at the way Axula dispelled his sword aura and managed to stay unaffected. As Uravis fights Axula, he realizes how he had underestimated Axula. Uravis, in order to weaken Axula's strength, uses the Lord of Flames, Volfus, which starts filling the area with heat. Due to the immense heat, everyone thinks Axula may not be able to survive. Axula, in return, uses the Earthquake Smasher, but Uravis is still unaffected. The path between Uravis and Axula was closed, but has now been opened by Axula, as he wants to go head-to-head with Uravis. He uses the Aura Fist to attack Uravis, thinking it will put an end to the fight, but Uravis manages to stand back. Joshua feels uneasy as Bronto gets out of control. Lugia tells Joshua that since Uravis also possesses a primordial stone, he must have noticed that Joshua has one too. The stones are reacting to each other. Uravis seems to have been aggravated and screams, "Burn everything to ashes." The audience is worried they might get affected, but Uravis makes sure to not create too much damage. Axula says Uravis is bound to be given the title of Master since his strength and endless energies have proven to everyone that he is the one who deserves it. As the fight ends, Uravis tells Joshua he has his eyes on him since he could already sense the possession of the primordial stone in Joshua. Axula has been severely injured and no one is allowed to meet him. Iselin asks the knight to let her meet Axula since she is one of his close escorts. Joshua enters, and he isn't allowed to join them. The Lion King, Ryan Geiger, shows up and asks the knight to let Joshua and Iselin in. As they go inside, they see Axula injured, and Joshua realizes that the holy healing may not work after the Inferno Extinction attack by Uravis. Joshua uses the holy magic technique to heal him, and it works, shocking everyone. Uravis is appreciated by his knights for fighting courageously and winning the title of Master. Even though Axula got defeated, Uravis is still glad to have fought him, as his strength and courage are incredible. Uravis expresses how he eagerly wanted to fight Christian, but since he forfeited, he might have to face Joshua Sanders, who is rumored to be the strongest of them all. He goes to get information about Joshua from Zero, the Moondor member. He tells Zero he's willing to pay 1 million gold in return for the information about Joshua. Zero refuses, saying he can't expose any kind of information about Joshua as he is a valuable asset to them, and any harm done to him may bring loss to the Moondors. He also mentions that the price has gone up and that he will now charge 100 million gold for the information. Uravis leaves and ponders that the information they have about Joshua may be priceless and very significant. The member of the Moon Doors, while talking to Zero, says that rumors have spread regarding the unification of the assassination organization on the continent for the elimination of Joshua. Zero wants to make sure nobody finds out about Joshua, since Joshua has information about the Crimson Coin, which the Moon Door needs at any cost. Axela is happy to have recovered earlier than usual and praises Joshua for having surpassed the priests in holy magic skills. As Iselin mentions the Lion King, Axela tells her that Joshua will have to fight the Lion King, one of the 12 superhumans, in order to win Reinhard. Joshua encounters the Tarpian, the Stormseat magician, and tells him that Evergrant will take over the magic tower and kill the current owner, Iron Dun Paray. Theta doesn't believe him and says he can no longer entertain false information. Joshua says he'll ensure to stop Evergrant, but in return, he asks him to help him become the Emperor of the Empire. Uravis is informed that Theta has forfeited the battle, which surprises him. Theta, however, informs Iron Dun Paray, the Magic Master, of the fact that Joshua has already used Bronto, and that 5 years ago someone tried to take Bronto from Joshua but was killed. The Magic Master doesn't believe Theta and asks him to return to the Magic Tower, as he has to appoint a new assistant leader. The Master of the Moon Door has called for Joshua. She reminds him of the Crimson Coin promised to them by Joshua 5 years ago. She agrees to tell Joshua everything if he reveals the location of the Crimson Coin. As she removes her veil, we find out that she is Lily Aphrodites, Paladin of Hubalt and Master of Moon Doors. She expresses the importance of the Crimson Coin, saying that it is a symbol of the god Hermes. She continues telling Joshua that the Tear of God artifact that Joshua destroyed was of great importance, and now the Pope is looking for the Crimson Coin to replace it. Joshua reveals the location of the coin, saying it is in the Imperial Avalon Empire. Joshua assures her that he'll get it. She asks for another favor in return for providing information. She proposes to Joshua and asks him to marry her in order to get the information he wants. Joshua is agitated and leaves. The finals have begun, and Joshua Sanders and Uravis have been selected. Uravis possesses a sword that is connected by wire between each portion and is named the Whip Sword. As they begin fighting, Uravis uses his unusual sword to create unpredictable sword slashes to disorient the target. Joshua believes Uravis is going to be a tough opponent. Uravis uses the Inferno of Extinction again, predicting the end of Joshua already. Joshua manages to deflect it. Uravis is surprised and realizes that there's something more to Joshua than what he shows. They both possess the primordial stone, which is why they are more than eager to defeat one another. They both use their extraordinary abilities and try to surpass one another. Uravis is overconfident at the thought of winning. A duel between fire and lightning as the audience shouts. It truly is a worthwhile duel to watch. Joshua makes a bet with Uravis that whoever loses will give their primordial to the winner. Joshua uses all his spear techniques to fight the mighty Uravis. Joshua uses his 5-star spear technique and pierces through Uravis, throwing him to the ground and winning the Master Wars with utmost courage. Uravis realizes he got unconscious and has been defeated by Joshua. He gets an uneasy feeling and realizes his power is being drained. The magma in him has left him since it cannot accept defeat. As he wakes up, he realizes it was all a dream, and he finds himself injured in his bed with a letter that is from Joshua, reminding Uravis of the bet they had during the fight. Joshua has now won and is considered the king of Reinhard. He asks them to not conduct pointless ceremonies and get to the point. The knights get offended, saying Joshua cannot skip the important coronation as the people may find him a king by name. Joshua says if his skillful coronation can lead to such chaos and hatred from people, he wouldn't want to be the king of Reinhard. They apologize to Joshua and promise to ignore hatred from people and not worry about pointless traditions. Joshua accepts the position, and everyone is sure he'll bring change to Reinhard. Joshua is now reminded of the challenge of fighting one of the 12 superhumans. He chooses Barbarian's mercenary as his opponent. Who is the strongest of all of them? Barbarian has been informed of the duel and is looking forward to it. In the Pontier's meeting room, Icarus and Princess Cheryl are formed, and Joshua will be fighting the Barbarian mercenary king, which has made Barbarian get distracted and disappear. They get assurance that Joshua is still supporting them in every way possible. They receive news of Cain being in danger as he was sent by Icarus into the middle of the enemy forces. Each one of the members, including Cox, has been intentionally misinformed by Icarus in order to find out who the spy from the Pontiers is that is spreading the updates to Cromble. Count Cox is suspected of revealing and exposing all the information and working against Pontiers and for Cromble. Icarus manages to find the spy with evidence and exposes him. Count Cox turns out to be the spy who has betrayed the Pontiers and poisoned the Duke as well. Cox admits to being the spy and says today marks the end of the Pontier family, indicating he has done something that could destroy the Empire. Joshua is given the crown by the Lion King, and he says he's disappointed Joshua didn't choose him as his opponent. He is impressed by Joshua's strength and courage. He says Joshua reminds him of when he was young and has the same willpower and strength. He gifts Joshua a coin-like object and advises him to always look around him and not at those above him, since it's always your allies trying to destroy you. Iselin is pissed at Joshua for choosing to fight the mercenary king, even though she had warned him already. Meanwhile, Lily Aphrodite shows up and says she is rooting for Joshua, her boyfriend. Joshua Sanders. Iselin gets triggered and says she's Joshua's most precious friend. Lily has come for the bet she made on Joshua of 50,000. Iselin comes forward and says she has bet 500,000 gold, which is primarily a gold ticket. Lily's makes a deal with Axula and in return asks him to become the mercenary king. Joshua is encountered by Count Ari, and he says he's been waiting for 5 years to fight him. He strikes at Joshua, but Joshua escapes and uses other techniques to strike back. He uses Magma and Magic Spear Art Stage 5. The Knights of Reinhard realize there's a fight going on in the forests. Count Ari promises to share the truth about the Agnes family with Joshua if he gets defeated. Once Joshua defeats him, he begins to tell him the truth, but is interrupted by the Knights of Reinhard, who have come to protect Joshua. He tells Joshua to be careful of his father because he is the Black God of the Avalon Empire. As the men gather, they pledge to support and protect him all the time. Cain is saved by the Death Knight sent by Joshua to save him from the explosion. Cain is surprised that the demon has been sent to protect him. The Death Knight says he can detect energies and that there has been a large explosion near the castle, and the princess and others are inside. Cain says they have Icarus and need not worry. A few days later, Princess Cyril and the others leave the castle with Duke Pontiers. Icarus is suspicious of Baron Arna, as he believes the Baron knows what the enemy is up to and has been informing them of everything. Icarus is worried Baron Arna might cause trouble, which he eventually does. He was a spy working for the Crombles, as they had promised him funds. Princess Cheryl says she is ready to sacrifice herself and her father, and the rest should be left untouched. Baron Arna is adamant and wants to kill Icarus. She agrees to accept all the conditions of Cromble, and soon after, Cain shows up and has brought the Death Knight in order to fight Baron Arna and defend Princess Cheryl and others. Cain challenges Baron Arna, saying that he will fight and defeat all his knights along with him. As they begin fighting, Cain manages to defeat all the knights with one strike. He uses the Aura Blade to fight Baron and manages to intimidate and scare him with some strikes. As they defeat him and the rest, Princess Cheryl suggests they go to the Peril Castle, as the territory is owned by her uncle. Joshua and his knights Reinhardt reach the Avalon territory, but are stopped by the heads of the Avalon territory. Joshua introduces them as his own trusted knights and is then allowed to go inside. The Mercenary King has declared a call up at the mercenary headquarters. The Mercenary King is advancing towards the Pontier family, Axula and Iselin plan, on getting involved to stop the Mercenary King. Meanwhile, the Crombles are plotting to reach the Pontiers and attack them. The King of Cromble has already sent his son, Gewog, to deal with the Pontiers, and the Mercenary King is waiting for his knights to arrive so he can chase the Pontiers and defeat them. Gewog has reached the Peril Castle and has set it on fire. The fire has been set, and Icarus and Cain are trying to protect the walls from catching fire while Gewog orders for the doors to be broken. As the troops break the doors and get inside, they are thrown away by the traps set by Icarus. Meanwhile, an intruder named Left of the Cromble family has arrived and asked the Pontiers to become slaves of Crombles. Soon after, another knight shows up. They begin fighting, and Cain is adamant they won't give up at any cost. Jaewog asks his knights to bring Princess Cheryl alive as a prize. Cain asks her to get away and hide, but she says they need to work together to stop them. Icarus tells them to hold on until Joshua comes. Lady Cheryl attacks from the left and finds herself thrown to the ground. As she is about to get attacked, Joshua shows up to protect her. He shouts, "I'll kill everyone who comes in my way." As Joshua shows up, he manages to knock down the knight who tried to kill Lady Cheryl. He encounters another knight, Left, who says that more reinforcements are coming. Joshua asks Cain to hurry and cut him down. As the knight threatens Joshua, Cain gets aggressive and strikes at him, surprising him with the strength he still has left. Joshua gives the knights another chance to flee, but they do not take him seriously. To teach them a lesson, he uses his extraordinary energies, like the great heaven's lightning depth, to eliminate all the vanguards. More troops are asked to advance forward, and as they do so, they see a huge number of knights coming towards them. The knights are the ones from Reinhard who promise to support Joshua in everything. Cain and Wright get into a brawl, and Cain wins. Varen Sten asks his men to set fire again, but they hesitate as they have their own knights merged with those of Joshua. But Varen is indifferent and wants his orders accepted. Joshua encounters Varen and tells him how he'll meet the same fate again at the hands of Joshua. The Crombles get overconfident with an army of 500 that Joshua eliminates with a single strike. Gewog and the others have been defeated and are now the prisoners of Joshua. We really hope that you enjoyed this first part of the manhwa. Make sure to like and subscribe for the next part.